Enemy. Two immense hands clasped together, and Blaskowitz, after careful consideration, finally agreed to join the Imperium's Great Crusade. Facing their common enemy, the Chaos Gods, they decided to unite and resist them. The inclusion of the newer stars was Blaskowitz's recognition of the Imperium of Man, establishing an equal relationship between them. Now, Blaskowitz endorsed the Emperor's plan and was willing to help him refine it, thereby realizing the plan to save all of humanity. Their relationship never changed, their cooperation remained equal. Blaskowitz's participation in the Great Crusade did not require him to obey the dictates of the Imperium's War Council. The Emperor granted him a very high degree of freedom. I have a gift for you. After confirming their partnership, the Emperor seemed somewhat emotional and excited. He took out a rectangular box and presented it to Blaskowitz. What's inside? Blaskowitz did not accept it, but instead asked the Emperor what was in the box. The Emperor gave too many things. Blaskowitz needed to deliberate. He pondered the Emperor's motives and intentions, as well as his relationship with his other brothers. Eating with someone means you owe them, taking from someone means you're beholden to them. This proverb from Old Terra always proved its worth. Don't overthink it. The Emperor saw Blaskowitz's apprehension and opened the black, carved box, revealing an object resting on red silk. The moment Blaskowitz saw it, his eyes widened, and a surge of excitement filled him, as if he had met an old friend after many years. Do you like it? The Emperor naturally saw the excitement in his eyes and handed the box to Blaskowitz. It was specially crafted for you by me. I went through a lot of trouble for it. Blaskowitz caressed the object in the box, feeling its texture. He did not refuse the Emperor's kindness and greatly cherished the Emperor's gift. I like it very much. It was an ancient, double-barreled shotgun, seemingly tailor-made for him, filling his heart with affection and familiarity. It was a primitive embodiment of an ancient weapon, with matchlock mechanisms on either side of its massive barrels, a wooden foregrip beneath the stock, and a body and grip forged from Wootz steel. The two barrels had massive caliber chambers, each as thick as a space marine's arm, joined together in a savage and overbearing manner. Ancient script was engraved on its body, etched into the seemingly rough steel, giving it a mysterious and ancient charm. Blaskowitz held the gun in his left hand, constantly flipping it, unable to put it down. Grip it tight, inject your fury. The Emperor raised his hand, clarifying the shotgun's extraordinary nature to Blaskowitz. Blaskowitz tightened his grip, injecting his spirit into the shotgun, an immortal will imbued with endless fury. The runes on the gun body glowed faintly, and as fury was injected, the gun body cracked with sparks, burning with an unquenchable rage all around it. The super shotgun. That's what I call it. The Emperor was very pleased with the pairing of the shotgun and Blaskowitz. He felt as if the man stood before him. It uses your fury as ammunition, possessing infinite power. Look at its chambers. The Emperor, like a craftsman introducing his masterpiece, gradually unveiled its mysteries. Blaskowitz's finger rested on the trigger. He spun the gun in a graceful flourish and then sharply flicked it, causing the shotgun to break open at the handle, revealing two large caliber chambers. His eyes lit up. Two golden bullets appeared out of thin air and loaded into the chambers. Bullets personally inscribed with runes by me. Under Blaskowitz's questioning gaze, the Emperor's voice held a deeply buried pride. They provide physical ammunition for firing from another dimension, delivering immense firepower. How many bullets? Blaskowitz operated it with one hand, closing the barrels with a Bourne-like familiarity. It depends on how many you want. The Emperor played coy, a mysterious smile on his brown-black face. Blaskowitz nodded in satisfaction, hanging the shotgun on his belt, a joyful smile on his face, which rarely showed emotion. Want to test its power? The Emperor kindly reminded him, seeing his impatience. Do you have a firing range here? No firing range. The Emperor slowly shook his head, a mysterious smile on his face, and pulled out a projection device from his robe. This is more suitable for you. Blaskowitz narrowed his eyes, looking at the Emperor's slightly smiling face, and suddenly felt the weapon in his hand was scalding. The proverb from Old Terra once again proved its worth. There is no such thing as a free meal. Psychnuan. Looking at the Emperor's projection, Blaskowitz saw a giant lizard with scales shimmering with psychic energy, brandishing its claws. Xenos occupy 13 star systems, claiming them as their inherent territory, and are rapidly expanding outwards. How many people do I have? My legion is still training and recruiting. Blaskowitz coldly watched the star systems occupied by the Xenos, where humans were enslaved, building magnificent palaces for them to worship gods and for live sacrifices. Russ and his legion will go with you. The warhounds of the 12th Legion will follow your command, they are the best assault troops. All right. Blaskowitz nodded, accepting the task. 2 Primarchs in command, 2 Astartes legions, plus their attached mortal auxiliary army. I also need to transfer members from the 4th, 7th, and 15th legions. Watching the constant influx of intelligence, Blaskowitz's thick brows furrowed slightly, understanding why the Emperor sent 2 legions, and even a Primarch. The Psychnuan was no simple Xenos. The Emperor listened to Blaskowitz's request but did not immediately agree. He walked to the desk and quickly wrote on a parchment, stamping it with his exclusive seal. Tomorrow, this order will be known throughout the Imperium of Man. Blaskowitz took it and looked, casting a surprised glance at the Emperor. After a moment of thought, he accepted the gift. It was an extremely authoritative order, granting Blaskowitz military conscription authority, allowing him to summon any Imperial unit to cooperate with his various military actions. Such an order would surely cause an uproar, but Blaskowitz resolutely accepted it. The reason was that the 21st Legion currently had too few members, and the training of Nor combat personnel had just begun. He was now a barebones commander, and indeed needed other units to cooperate in combat. Blaskowitz gave the Emperor a deep look, then strode out of the room, heading to the 6th Legion's garrison to discuss the battle plan with Russ. Watching Blaskowitz leave, the Emperor couldn't help but raise his right hand and clench it tightly, making an encouraging gesture to himself. He had gained a powerful external ally. As he had just said, he could execute his plan more boldly and put the Webway project on the agenda as soon as possible. Participating in the Great Crusade was merely icing on the cake. The Emperor's true goal was for Blaskowitz to guard the Webway in the future. The Emperor couldn't help but hum an unnamed tune, standing before the obsidian wall, continuing his detailed planning. Blaskowitz strode forward. Space Marines who saw the Primarch's figure knelt on one knee, showing respect for the Genofather's kin. When he arrived at the 6th Legion's garrison, Leman Russ stood on a platform, addressing his Genisons who remained on Terra. Blaskowitz stopped in a shadow, quietly waiting for Russ to finish his address. At this time, Russ had changed greatly. His demeanor was no longer savage, but like a wise king, passionately speaking to his subjects. As the Primarch's speech reached its climax and faded, Blaskowitz appeared at the opportune moment, striding towards Russ. Seeing his brother arrive, a hint of pleasant surprise flashed in Russ' beast-like eyes, but more was understanding. He knew why Blaskowitz had come. He had a good impression of Blaskowitz and was willing to deepen their acquaintance. Russ felt that he and Blaskowitz, having returned to the Imperium one after another, should learn from each other in terms of Legion integration. He had split his Legion into 13 great companies, each corresponding to Fenrisian culture, preparing to integrate the Legion with their homeworld's culture. He renamed the 6th Legion to the more savage, Space Wolves. Before Russ could make a move, his 2 wolf brothers ran swiftly, darting out with a whoosh and heading straight for Blaskowitz. Great Primarch. The warriors of the Space Wolves all knelt, welcoming the arrival of the Genofather's brother. Rise. Blaskowitz stroked the head of a giant wolf, his voice calm and powerful, clearly reaching the ears of every Space Marine. Brother. Russ and Blaskowitz embraced warmly. You know why I'm here, it's time for us to embark on our journey. Blaskowitz went straight to the point, stating his intention to Russ. The Space Wolves await the hunt. A fierce glint flashed in Russ' eyes, his wild face becoming grim, revealing his sharp canine teeth, to tear apart the Xenos with my brother. Blaskowitz took out the projection device and told Russ about the Emperor's early arrangements. The 12th Legion is gradually assembling in the Ultima Orientis sector, awaiting you and me. Tomorrow, astropathic messages about the operation will be transmitted to every participating fleet. This is a massive joint operation. We must depart now, to rendezvous with them before the legions in the fleet complete their assembly. Yes. Russ was equally serious. This was his first battle since returning to the Space Wolves, and the Imperium's first joint operation involving 2 Primarchs. Blaskowitz, please board my Gloriana Queen-class flagship. We will travel together to the rendezvous point. Russ extended his most sincere invitation to his brother. I'm tired, boss. Ains ul G0 when creators thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote. Campaign. Oh. Blaskowitz raised an eyebrow, a glint in his eye. Is she ready? Gloriana-class battleships, the most powerful mass-produced battleships in the Imperium at this stage, were all unique. The Emperor ordered them to be built on Mars or other forge worlds, incorporating extensive handcraftsmanship. Each one was a masterpiece, imbued with the painstaking efforts of master artisans. When Rus returned, the Emperor bestowed upon him a Gloriana-class battleship as his Primarch's flagship. The Emperor also granted Blaskowitz 1, which was currently accompanying the Void Wanderer to the newer stars for some modifications and upgrades. Thanks to the efforts of the Legion and those red-robed ones, she was fully prepared not long ago, Rus said, puffing out his chest with great pride when he mentioned his sons. And not the eccentric members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. She's waiting for us there. Rus pointed to space, and Blaskowitz looked in the direction of his finger, at a massive ship docked in the Lion's Gate spaceport. A Primarch's eyesight could naturally discern a wolf's head silhouette painted on her aft quarter armor plate. The Hierarchal, Rus said, hands on his hips, looking up at the Glory Queen-class battleship, proudly explaining the origin of her name, from Fenrisian mythology, the name of a great king. She deserves such a glorious, symbolic name. Blaskowitz nodded in agreement. Gloriana-class battleships, though mass-produced, were each unique, one-of-a-kind entities. They were born noble, partnered with the Imperium's most powerful Primarchs, and worthy of being named after heroes and kings. Bored, my brother, she will surely surprise you. Rus' rugged face held a mysterious smile as he invited Blaskowitz to board his flagship, wanting to give his brother a small surprise. Let's go, I want to see the surprise you've prepared. I'm a little impatient. Blaskowitz naturally wouldn't refuse his brother's good intentions, actively taking Rus' arm, and with a bit of force, pulling him towards the spaceport. Rus didn't expect Blaskowitz to be so enthusiastic, it was beyond his expectations. Surprised, he turned and roared to his legionnaires behind him, board the ship, assemble. The space wolves exchanged glances, watching their gene father being dragged away by his brother. The Hierarchal. Due to the combat orders, she was ready for battle. During the final tense calibrations, Blaskowitz and Rus, the two sons of the Emperor, boarded the battleship. Walking down the corridors specially prepared for Primarchs, the serfs, mortals, and space marines along the way all knelt, welcoming the two great Primarchs. Compared to other warships, the Gloriana Queen's corridors and cabins were much wider, and the living conditions significantly better. In his leisure, Blaskowitz had inspected returning warships and found that the living conditions for mortals inside were extremely poor, with families living in cramped compartments. There was competition between families, even fierce struggles over a single switch or valve. The environment here doesn't compare to your realm. Rus was perceptive, he naturally noticed the pity in his brother's eyes as he looked at the kneeling crewmen. Machines are indeed convenient, but the Imperium cannot endure a second rebellion. As a Primarch, Rus' wisdom was also extraordinary. He had learned about Blaskowitz's origins from the Emperor and knew that the realm Blaskowitz governed was an enlightened, progressive utopia. Humans and machines coexisted harmoniously, the people under his rule were free from hunger, and material needs were no longer the primary focus. There, people were strong due to their martial spirit, revered honor, understood right from wrong, and it was a cradle for powerful warriors. Rus admired his brother's magnanimity from the bottom of his heart, his broad mind accommodating machines and also encompassing the Imperium. He believed Blaskowitz was a man of both might and wisdom, powerful in strength, yet with a higher spiritual realm. He could personally establish the newer stars, such a hopeful, brilliant realm, and also tolerate the darkness and filth of the Imperium. He never showed his pity for mortals on the surface. He clearly knew that the way to show compassion was not to pity an individual or a world, but to pull humanity out of the quagmire of war. Because of this, Rus' evaluation of Blaskowitz in his heart had always been higher than that of Horus. Both were Primarchs with leadership abilities, but Blaskowitz was far more capable than that bald-headed brute who was a bit of a daddy's boy. At least, that's what Rus thought. I know, Blaskowitz smiled easily, walking abreast with Rus towards what he called the Palace of Surprises. His gaze left the serfs and mortals, he naturally understood Rus' meaning. The Emperor could have forcefully demanded Blaskowitz's realm be incorporated into the Imperium and then granted high autonomy, but he gave the newer stars equal status with the Imperium. The purpose was simple, to completely isolate Argent Noor in the Imperium, allowing the two empires to develop in parallel. Argent Noor's size was small, able to accommodate intelligent machines, the Imperium's size was too vast, with no room for artificial intelligence. An independent Argent Noor was a compromise to Blaskowitz and also a protection for the remaining machines. It provided intelligent machines with a clear place to exist, avoiding interference from the Adeptus Mechanicus and preventing a second machine rebellion. With Argent Noor's size, even if its territory expanded tenfold, the Imperium could still crush them if machines rebelled. As for the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Imperium's strict prohibition of artificial intelligence. It's the Noor stars researching intelligent machines, what does that have to do with our Imperium? The Adeptus Mechanicus shouldn't come to the Imperium to reason, go to the Noor stars, our relationship is equal. The two Primarchs walked along, occasionally telling jokes to lighten the serious atmosphere. This is it, Russ placed his hands on the adamantium door, pushing it open with his immense strength. Blazkowicz was equally expectant, wanting to see what his brother's so-called surprise looked like. The door gradually opened, and the scene inside was indeed extraordinary, making Blazkowicz's eyes light up, as if he had arrived on Fenris. The hall's layout was no different from the banquet halls on Fenris, only scaled up considerably. The floor was adorned with various fur rugs, the dome inlaid with the spine and ribs of a giant beast, and the palace walls were carved with symbols of Fenrisian culture. Several braziers burned with oil made from animal fat, casting a dim but warm light in the hall, strongly Fenrisian in style. He couldn't help but praise, it's really good, much more fitting than cold steel. My lord, you've arrived. The Fenrisians enthusiastically greeted him, kneeling before Blazkowicz to show him the highest respect. No need for formalities, Blazkowicz sat on a fur rug, feeling at ease here. Looking at the Fenrisians with their thick, braided hair, he kindly asked them, are you still accustomed to Terra's climate? It's boiling. I almost want to shave my head, the person asked sat beside him, looking displeased, and those people telling us to follow all sorts of rules, it's just annoying. Russ also sat cross-legged, asking the Fenrisians to prepare mead, he wanted to drink and chat. What do you think of this battle? Russ shed his disguise, his eyes were sharp, and his large hand gently tapped the table. Blazkowicz also became serious, he understood the dangers of this battle. Psychic, he took out the projection device again, placing it on the table, continuously playing intelligence on the Psychnuans. The alien race has powerful physiques, they have thick scales that can withstand bolter fire, but these are not the main point. Psychic power is the key. Blazkowicz touched the projection, revealing the most crucial information, his expression serious, his narrowed eyes showing disgust, eerie supernatural power. Witchcraft, Russ agreed deeply, his face showing similar disgust. Witches are a bunch of charlatans. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, remembering his golden glowing father, and changed his wording, mysterious beings. Russ let out a long breath, almost cursing himself. Although he didn't use psychic powers, he had strong psychic talent and could even perform some simple minor spells. Blazkowicz nodded in deep agreement, no one knew the dangers of psychic powers more than him. Masters who dabbled in psychic powers would eventually find chaos waiting to devour their souls. Blazkowicz had only ever seen one person use psychic powers without chaos corruption, the Emperor. The two remained silent, watching the projection continuously display recorded intelligence about the Psychnuans. The more they watched, the deeper the two Primarchs, brows furrowed, the aliens, named Psychnuans, by the Imperial Vanguard, were indeed a bit troublesome. Their species had clear divisions of labor and a high degree of social organization. The warrior caste stood 3 meters tall, with extremely high-scale defense, and their weapons could easily cleave through Space Marine ceramide armor, with individual strength far exceeding that of a Space Marine. The resonant field formed by their scales allowed the Psychnuans to move through the earth like fish, even easily burrowing through human defensive fortifications. The alien warriors possess psychic abilities, enhancing their physical strength while also creating terrifying psychic illusions that cause mortal soldiers to lose their combat effectiveness in fear. High-ranking shamans can calmly wield psychic power and use various spells. The 5th Legion assessed that the Psychnuans have extremely high war potential, with over 1 million mature warriors in their entire race, hundreds of millions of lower-tier servant soldiers, and a large number of shamanic sorcerers. They occupy 18 dense star systems, with their sphere of influence spanning 50 light-years. The only thing restricting their expansion is their relatively immature navigation technology, which relies on reverse engineering human leftover technology for interstellar travel. How should we fight? Russ licked his fangs, looking at his brother. Even without systematic war education, he was adept at planning combat strategies due to his innate war instincts. He asked Blazkowicz if he, the king who had received systematic military training, was willing to offer advice. You fight your way, I'll fight mine. Blazkowicz stated his war strategy without hesitation, find their core world. I will lead the warhounds to the main world. To draw the aliens back to rescue it. You hunt on the periphery, driving them to contract their defenses, using the mobility of the Imperial fleet to cut off the reinforcing fleets and resolve the battle in space. So be it, Russ thumped his chest in agreement, giving his approval to the overall strategy set by Blaskowitz. He also knew that the core of his brother's strategy was to save the tens of billions of humans enslaved in over a dozen star systems. Attract the main forces to return to defense, the wolves gradually dismantle the poorly defended outer worlds, resolve the enemy fleet in the void, eliminate the enemy's living forces, and then, when the time is ripe, destroy the aliens' throne world, completely eradicating the entire species. I'm counting on you. Blaskowitz earnestly entrusted Russ. He would descend into the alien core for a prolonged tug of war. And the decisive factor behind him would be Russ' space wolves, responsible for annihilating all reinforcing forces. I will be your most reliable support. Russ knew the weight of his responsibility. His brother had entrusted everything to him. To victory. Russ raised his goblet. The Fenrisians presented mead, and Blaskowitz and Russ drank it, finalizing the battle details. The Gloriana-class battleship trembled with the roar of its warp engines. The Hrothgar officially set sail, departing from the Sol system to the Ultima Orientis sector, where the aliens were rampant. In the Ultima Orientis sector, the 12th Legion's forces were gathering. A powerful force was assembling at the rendezvous point, preparing to deliver a powerful blow to the aliens. Karn, look. The current Legion Master of the 12th Legion, through the Gloriana Queen's viewport, witnessed Imperial ships tearing through the warp veil, pouring into the real universe like an iron torrent. Legion Master Locke shook his head with a sigh. The scale of this war seemed somewhat vast. The Imperium had summoned the Warhounds, as well as warriors from the 4th, 7th, and 15th Legions, to be commanded by a great Primarch. Furthermore, all fleets and warriors of the 6th Legion were continuously arriving to greet their Primarch. 2 main legions, and 2 Primarchs in command. What an honor it was for several Space Marine legions to dispatch personnel to assist the 2 Primarchs in combat. And what trust it was for the Emperor to allow the bravest warhounds to participate in such a glorious war. Captain Karn of the 8th Assault Company also saw the never-fading warp light and expressed deep emotion. The scale of this war far exceeds our imagination. Since embarking on the Great Crusade, Karn had never seen a fleet of this size, with over 100,000 Space Marines assembled. He anticipated the glory of conquest but also worried that the intensity of the war would cause heavy casualties among the warhounds, who specialized in assault. The Legion was not commanded by their Gene Father, but by another Primarch. Karn never feared death. Dying in battle was a warrior's best end. His concern was how the warhounds would be used. It was like 2 people fighting, and the warhounds were weapons in the Primarch's hands. Would he use skill to kill his opponent, or brute force, chipping the weapon's blade? How will the Primarch use us? Karn openly expressed his concern. The man before him was the Legion Master, who loved the Legion more than anyone. I don't know. Locke shook his head, feeling a sense of bewilderment for the first time regarding the Legion's fate. The Legion's fate was no longer in the Legion's hands, but in the palm of a Primarch. The 2 resolute tough men gradually fell silent, contemplating the Legion's future, watching the brilliant Star River outside the window and the continuously arriving fleets. What kind of person is the Primarch of the 21st Legion? Karn suddenly asked, his voice, tempered by war, carrying a curious clarity. I don't know either. Legion Master Locke shook his head again. He had too many uncertainties today. I heard from brothers from Terra that the Emperor personally prepared an unprecedented ceremony to welcome his return. Then he must be an extraordinary being. Karn nodded repeatedly, his eyes filled with anticipation. Perhaps our Gene Father will also be warmly welcomed upon his return. Locke smiled, looking at the vast void, also with a face full of expectation. They've arrived. A hint of unnaturalness flashed across the Legion Master's face as he saw the discord in the void, the 15th Legion. Astropathic messages had spread throughout the combat legions, so they already knew which legions would come, but seeing them in person, it was inevitable for their hearts to stir. The 15th Legion was small in number and always acted mysteriously. Rumors claimed that the gene seed of their cousins was unstable, often resulting in some flesh mutations. Such negative rumors caused many Space Marine legions to maintain a certain distance from them. Time passed quickly, the assembling fleet gradually thinned, and the star system slowly returned to calm. The vast majority of the fleet hovered tightly in the void, filling the entire star system. However, the Space Marines waiting were not calm. Instead, as time passed, their anticipation grew stronger. When the warp rift opened, and the Gloriana class returned to the real universe, proudly displaying her form, intense cheers erupted in the communication channels. Everyone knew the two great Primarchs, two of the Emperor's sons, had arrived in the starry sky. Hail, great Primarchs! The dense communication channels echoed with the humble voices of warriors and captains, who, with subservient tones, welcomed the arrival of the two noble beings. 12th Legion flagship, prepare to receive the Primarchs. Without any return greeting, the Primarchs calmly accepted the humility from the mortals. Their appearance was a symbol of authority. As the teleportation light flashed, everyone knelt in the bridge of the Warhounds Legion's Gloriana Queen flagship. Rise. His voice was steady and deep, gentle yet full of power. No one dared to disobey him. When the Legion warriors rose, they saw the Primarch for the first time, so great and powerful. The Emperor's son's body was full of strength, his face heroic and extraordinary, and he sat on the throne, proclaiming his authority. He wore a simple kiltarmor around his waist, battle boots on his feet, with his thighs and upper body exposed. Shoulder pads were fastened to his waist with crossed leather straps, and he wore a red cloak. At the first sight of him, some even knelt again, not daring to desecrate the Primarch's glorious heroism. He was accompanied by 30 warriors of the 21st Legion, who stood in two lines, guarding the throne. The Primarch, like a great king, looked down upon the humble subjects below. Report. Blaskowitz's lips parted slightly, wanting to know if the warriors he requested were in position. 4th Legion, Phrixus, salutes the Primarch, bringing 2,000 Legion warriors for you. 7th Legion, Appius, salutes the Primarch, bringing 2,000 Legion warriors for you. 15th Legion, Ahriman, salutes the Primarch, bringing 100 Legion warriors for you. Warhounds Legion, Locke, salutes the Primarch. The Warhounds Legion awaits your command. Blaskowitz nodded, his gaze sweeping over the Legion representatives. These resolute warriors puffed out their chests, accepting the Primarch's scrutiny. To ensure nothing went wrong, Blaskowitz had called upon the siege engineers of the 4th Legion, the defenders of the 7th Legion, and the psychic warriors of the 15th Legion. His gaze fell upon the red-robed Mechanicus adept, whose sharp eyes made him tremble with fear. Immediately kneeling again before the Primarch, 2 Titan legions await your command. 600,000 solar auxiliary army await your command. The mortal officer, wearing a high velvet hat, also knelt and swore allegiance, reporting to the Primarch that the army was ready. All Warhound warships, 1 Titan legion, and the mortal auxiliary army will follow me. Other legions will concentrate their warriors on the capital ships and follow, and the vacated warships and other vessels will be commanded by Russ. With a simple sentence, he divided the military resources, separating the Void warships and landing craft, giving clear allocations. Russ, the Void fleet is yours. Blaskowitz informed him via the communicator, then said to the various Legion leaders on the bridge, move quickly. We must depart ahead of schedule. You just watch, my brother. Russ' rough and wild voice came through the comms channel. He was also rapidly issuing orders, and the Space Wolves fleet was gathering around the Hrothgar. Under Blaskowitz's swift command, the warriors of the supporting legions immediately sprang into action, quickly assembling on the flagship and transferring command of the excess warships to Russ. Where are the tongues? Facing the Primarch's gaze, Locke immediately responded, bringing them up now. Even before the Primarch arrived, the Warhounds, following astropathic directives, had captured Psychnuans alive on a frontier world for interrogation. He suddenly knelt, along with the warriors of the Warhounds Legion. I am very sorry, Lord, the Legion interrogators couldn't extract any intelligence. Locke's voice was full of frustration. The Warhounds Legion had failed the Primarch's expectations. They would rather die than surrender, rather endure torture to death than utter a single word. That is not your fault. The galaxy is full of stubborn individuals who would rather die than yield. Blaskowitz did not blame the Warhounds Legion master. It was a trivial matter. He had many ways to make Xenos speak. Locke and Karn breathed a sigh of relief. The Primarch's leniency far exceeded their expectations. The Warhounds had even prepared to accept punishment. You weren't entirely without gain. At least you let us know that the Xenos races have deep bonds and won't easily betray their own kind, didn't you? The Primarch, with a benevolent smile and an extremely serious tone, said to the Warhounds, we can make a big deal out of this, can't we? The leaders of the various legions on the bridge marveled at the Primarch's generous spirit. Their bodies beneath their power armor trembled slightly. The great being's unintentional encouragement deeply moved the Legion warriors. Lord, Locke, in his excitement, was about to kneel again, but Blaskowitz stopped him with a raised hand. No need for that. Save your energy for the battlefield. We will never fail your expectations. The Warhound's warriors pounded their chest plates, making a resounding thud. Their resolve was firm and powerful. As they spoke, a steel cage was carried up by Legion soldiers, holding a yellowish Psychnuan. Its claws scraped against the steel, making a hissing sound. Its large vertical pupils constantly scanned its surroundings, and it kept flicking out its tongue to test the air. Blaskowitz saw the full appearance of the Xenos, a 3-meter-tall body, capable of walking on 2 legs like a human, with short, powerful lower limbs and strong, slender upper limbs with 4 fingers for gripping weapons. The Psychnuan's body was strong and powerful, protected by thick, bony scales, and its back featured prominent, brightly colored dorsal fins. Human, its cold face showed disdain, saliva constantly dripping from its sharp mouth, as it spoke in halting human language. I will say nothing. Having long enslaved humans, the creature naturally knew some human language. It remained arrogant even in its cage. Its eyes reflected the stern array of the Gothic bridge. It saw the solemnly standing humans and the giant figure on the throne. The creature's vertical pupils contracted sharply. It didn't even dare to look directly at the giant, continuing to utter syllables in its broken language. Will not yield to you. You. Karn stepped forward, preparing to reprimand the captive Psychnuan, but saw the Primarch raise his hand. Do not get angry with a beast. Destroy their culture, eliminate their race, and completely erase them from the memory of the universe. Blaskowitz spoke the judgment of a race in calm language, as if describing a trivial matter. The Psychnuan struggled in its cage. It had, of course, understood the humans' plans for its race. Ahriman, read its memory and obtain the location of the Xenos' homeworld. Yes, Lord. Ahriman, from the 15th Legion, responded solemnly to the Primarch, walked in front of the Psychnuan, and closed his eyes. As he acted, the superhuman soldiers on the bridge clearly felt an invisible force connect with the Psychnuan. The Xenos' body twitched. It trembled under the psychic invasion, but it curled into a ball, instinctively adopting a defensive posture. Ahriman, in his red armor, withdrew his psychic power and said somewhat hesitantly to the Primarch, Lord, their race has a psychic barrier. Forcing an invasion will lead to its death. Cough, cough, human, powerless. The Xenos was still mocking, laughing at humanity's helplessness. So, it just needs to voluntarily lower its mental defenses. Blaskowitz nodded slightly, asking Ahriman calmly, without blaming him. Yes, Lord. Ahriman was somewhat flustered but still nodded heavily. Beast. Blaskowitz sat on the warship's throne, calling out to the trapped creature in the cage, raise your lowly head and face me. The Psychnuan felt the scorn. It angrily raised its head, looking at the tall human on the dais. HMPH. Blaskowitz snorted coldly. His gaze met the Xenos, instantly, and the suppressed killing intent in his mind pierced directly into the Psychnuan through his eyes. All the mortals on the bridge knelt, sweat pouring down like rain. The Space Marines did not blame them. The killing intent and fury released by the Primarch in an instant made their 2 hearts beat erratically. The Psychnuan was enveloped in boundless rage. The killing intent instantly pierced its brain's defenses. It suddenly reared up and fell backward, its genitals ejecting a yellow liquid from fright. It curled up in a ball, clutching its tail, shrinking into a tight mass in the cage, its scales rubbing together uneasily. The Primarch's majesty swept through the bridge like a storm. Ahriman seized the opportunity, immediately employing psychic invasion to gather intelligence on the Xenos race. Lord, I know everything. After a few breaths, Ahriman bowed to the Primarch, his power armor's servosystem whining from overload. While sifting through the creature's memories, he had glimpsed a primal horror, and the secretion of sweat triggered the power armor's purification alarm. Ahriman walked to the bridge's command console. After some operations, he quickly pinpointed the Xenos' homeworld among the stars. Notify the fleet to proceed to the Xenos' homeworld. Blaskowitz immediately gave the order. His forces set off, like a sharp dagger, stabbing directly towards the Xenos' homeworld. Compile the rest of the intelligence into a written report. I want to review it at any time. Understood, Lord. Russ, I'm taking the lead. Blaskowitz opened the holographic image to bid farewell to his brother. His accompanying fleet was entering the warp. Be careful. Russ reminded him very seriously. He knew his brother's tactic was a crazy move to directly descend upon the Xenos' homeworld. The Space Wolves fleet will blockade space. Blaskowitz nodded, then closed the communication. The ships entered the warp for a brief system jump. Ultima Orientis Sector, Salt System. This is what the Psychnuans called this high-density star system. Ahriman quickly organized the intelligence and displayed it on dataslates for the fleet to read. When the Warhound's Legion's Gloriana Queen flagship exited the warp and entered real space, the Salt's main star was below. The preceding fleet had already spread out into the system, continuously scanning the entire system to gather the intelligence the Primarch needed. The Xenos homeworld, a temperate jungle world, was lush with greenery. The fleet's augurs quickly completed their scans and then compiled and transmitted the data, bringing the entire system to life on the holographic command display. Warships, attack them. Drive away the Xenos warships, and transmit the news of our arrival to their society. Seeing the images of the star system, Blazkowicz quickly made a decision, ordering the fleet to drive away the Xenos warships from their star system. To avoid presenting overwhelming superiority, Blazkowicz specifically dispatched destroyers to attack the Xenos, rock-like warships. In the jungles of Salts, Xenos hive cities stood, with huge reactor plumes rising, turning into vapor that nourished the dense forest. Compared to the Imperium's unrestrained development, the Xenos seemed to understand harmonious coexistence. There were a total of 6 Xenos hive cities. The augurs also discovered a large number of human slaves in the hive cities. Here, use plasma bombardment to clear the surrounding jungle. Blazkowicz selected the city to attack. It was not far from the Xenos capital, deep within a dense jungle. After clearing the jungle, it would be an exposed plain with no defenses. The Primarch's will was quickly relayed. A destroyer adjusted its posture, its broadside macrocannons firing continuously. The Xenos city quickly raised a psychic shield to defend against the fleet's attack from space. Plasma clusters crashed down, piercing the green jungle city, like a doomsday judgment from the heavens. Facing the purple psychic shield, the macrocannons attacked relentlessly, engulfing the Xenos city in scorching plasma. Blazkowicz knew it was futile. The Xenos' psychic talent was strong. When they gathered, the resulting psychic resonance could stack, and the city's psychic shield was a manifestation of their convergence. When the destroyer ceased its bombardment, the green jungle hive city still stood. The surrounding jungle had been vaporized, leaving a vitrified crystalline desert. Are the Warhound's warriors ready? The Primarch inquired through the comms channel. His voice was as calm as water, a seemingly ordinary question yet carrying an inexplicable majesty. We are always ready to fight for you. Locke's suppressed roar echoed back through the comms channel. They had already retreated from the bridge and entered the drop pods, awaiting orders. 30,000 Warhounds, divided into 3 waves, will conduct precision orbital drops to seize the city's outer facilities. The Titan Legion will drop according to my designated positions, acting as mobile fire platforms to cover the Space Marine's advance. Orbital drop initiated. With the Primarch's command, the fleet's warships aligned their undersides with the Xenos homeworld. The first wave of 2,500 drop pods, under the cover of fleet firepower, rained down like a meteor shower onto the Xenos homeworld. The Space Marine legions of the Imperium of Man, riding in drop pods, resisted the increasing atmospheric drag with superhuman endurance. 2,500 drop pods, carrying 10,000 Death Angels, slammed into the Xenos hive city. The Xenos hive city on the ground saw the dense meteors streaking across the sky, and their cold, bestial eyes narrowed in terror. The powerful humans had long since fallen. Where did these new humans come from, and when would they rise again? As the human slaves looked up at the sky, the dense drop pods ignited hope. They could not be mistaken, these were technological creations belonging to humanity. The sky of Salts was enveloped in fear. The drop pods screamed as they tore through the atmosphere, their tail thrusters firing to maintain speed, signaling that the Legion was about to set foot on Xenos land. The Xenos warriors were eager for battle, heading towards the landing zone before the humans could land. Their weapons awaited blood, determined to expel the humans who had invaded their home world. When the drop pods crashed, Space Marines in blue and white power armor stepped onto the crystallized sand, and the war between humans and Psychnuan officially began. The Psychnuan surged out of the city, diving into the sand like fish, evading long-range fire, and rapidly charging towards the Warhound's Legion, intent on destroying the human landing zone. Protect the landing zone. Legion Commander Locke was the first to rush out of his drop pod. He was the temporary ground commander, responsible for establishing the landing zone. He glanced at the dust stirred up by the rapidly moving Psychnuan and ordered the Legion warriors to hold their ground, covering the later landing forces. Those lowly Xenos dared to charge the Warhounds, a sight that would never have occurred in previous battles. Today, the Warhounds were constrained by their Primarch, they had to restrain themselves to achieve victory in the grand strategy. For the Emperor. For the Primarch. Locke activated the power axe in his right hand, ignited the massive engine of the chainsword in his left, and shouted for the Emperor and the Primarch. He led his brothers to the front, providing cover for the landing zone and clearing the area while awaiting support. The Psychnuan, like fish leaping from water, also roared, shouting their battle cries in their own Xenos language, defending their homeland. Melee combat. There was no long-range exchange, the first ground engagement between the two sides was the most brutal melee. Along a 5-kilometer front, 10,000 Space Marines fought a bloody battle. They had berserkers engaging in close combat, fending off enemy charges, and also marksmen providing covering fire from the rear for their brothers at the front. Abominations. Face the wrath of the Imperium. Karn wielded 2 chain axes, his wild roar was chilling, and the monomolecular saw blades of the chain axes chewed through death. The Psychnuan warriors shrieked, their vibrating weapons emitting high-frequency sound waves that grated on the teeth. Mixed with the natural vibrations of their scales, they produced an unbearable noise, infecting the enemy's auditory system. The Legion warriors activated their Lyman's ear implants, shielding the Psychnuan's sonic interference, and engaged in battle with their weapons. The power of the Space Marines was fully demonstrated at this moment. Their close combat weapons cleaved through the Psychnuan's scales, tearing apart their bodies. Bodies reshaped by the Emperor shed hot blood in the savage slaughter, continuously killing the surging Psychnuan. Although not superior in physical strength, with agile movements and swift reactions, the Space Marines' overall combat power far surpassed that of the Psychnuan. Karn was undoubtedly the star of the battlefield, his chain axes swung continuously, and his kill counter numbers jumped rapidly. He stood amidst piles of Xenos, red blood staining his blue and white power armor, constantly slaughtering the enemies of humanity. The Psychnuan's psychic abilities were suppressed, psychic illusions could not affect the Space Marines' minds, leading to a completely even fight. High-frequency blades tore open human power armor, and sharp claws and hisses were equally deadly, their ferocious strength could send enemies flying. On the front line of the landing zone, the first 10,000 Space Marines clashed with an endless stream of arriving Psychnuan. The blood spilled by both sides boiled on the still scorching sand, a hatred between them that would not end until one was dead. Clang, clang, clang. Karn felt something hit his power armor, he immediately retreated from close combat. Not just him, the Legion warriors' decisions were extremely swift, with most choosing to retreat. The Psychnuan auxiliary army arrived, their bodies were smaller than the warriors, and they advanced slowly, carrying automatic weapons. Among the auxiliary army, the Space Marines saw human figures, they were emaciated and expressionless, firing their weapons. The fleet in orbit did not cease, new airborne units arrived quickly. Soon, a roar came from the sky again, this time it was not Space Marine drop pods, but mortal auxiliary army landing craft. Brothers. Hold on. The Primarch's reinforcements have arrived. Legion Commander Locke raised his weapon and let out an excited cheer, he truly hadn't expected that the mortal forces would land in less than 2 minutes of close combat. Amidst his excitement, he marveled at the Primarch's ability, such coordination was simply incredible. The mortal legion marched out of the landing craft, their formation had already been completed inside the ship, allowing them to fight immediately upon landing. They quickly moved into the battle line, using the Space Marines as a pivot, providing long-range fire support for the powerful demigod warriors. Adeptus Mechanicus members installed shield generators to ensure the landing site was protected from heavy fire. In the second largest city on the Psychnuan home world, within the landing zone established by the Legion, the Imperium's army had gained a foothold. The Xenos became even more frenzied, all city gates opened, and under the protection of psychic shields, Psychnuan warriors and the auxiliary army continuously poured out. The auxiliary army was too numerous, the Psychnuan's auxiliary army also burrowed underground, evading artillery fire and circumventing the powerful human long-range firepower. Furthermore, Psychnuan warriors infiltrated from underground outside the battle line, directly rushing into the human lines and attacking weak points. For a time, the fearless Psychnuan caused no small trouble within the human lines. Retreat to within the shield's protection. The Adeptus Mechanicus members shrieked, their cold mechanical voices surprisingly filled with urgency and excitement. The Titan thrones will arrive in 20 seconds. The urgent shouts in the comms channel pulled back the Warhound's constantly advancing line. No one could ignore the Titans descending from the sky. 20 seconds. The Adeptus Mechanicus timing was precise, and a huge oppressive force descended from the sky as 3 Titan thrones slammed down around the landing zone. Rumble. The mortals knelt in the violent tremors, closing their eyes and crouching to maintain balance. The Space Marines also lowered their bodies, taking a brief rest amidst the intense impact. Only the Adeptus Mechanicus members, observing the shield readings, praised the omniscia and the great power of machinery. Outside the shield, the Psychnuan army and the stealthy burrowers in the sand were shaken to death by the immense impact. When the dust settled, the Titan thrones stood tall outside the shield. As their hatches opened, 3 Warhound Titans slowly rose from within the thrones. The Titan war machines have arrived. Destroy the enemies of the Omniscia. The 30-meter-tall Warhound Titans, as arranged by the Primarch, slowly retreated to the side of the battle line, their various weapons continuously striking the Xenos hive city, suppressing the Psychnuan's psychic barrier. You can rest for a while, the Xenos won't dare to come out now. The Primarch's voice came through the comms channel. His voice was reassuring, calming the hearts that beat fiercely from the intense fighting. As his voice faded, 5 Stormhawks descended from the sky, and 10 tall figures emerged, along with 10 Adeptus Mechanicus personnel. The Doom Slayers, at Blaskowitz's instruction, arrived at the ground battlefield to carry out a critical mission. The most difficult aspect of the Psychnuans was not their powerful bodies, but the combined psychic field they generated when gathered together. They only needed to stand together, and the converged psychic field became a shield, with an endless source of energy. Macrocannon bombardment and ground fire strikes were not very effective and wasted time, and Blaskowitz's greatest shortage was time. The city had to be captured quickly, and a foothold secured, otherwise, reinforcements from the enemy's home world would surround them, leading to a difficult war of attrition. The Doom Slayers who landed, after a brief discussion, reboarded the Stormhawks and headed to their mission location. Lances of light continuously fell from the sky, striking the Xenos city, and the psychic shield glowed and flickered. This is it. A 5-man squad of Doom Slayers, riding a Stormhawk, left the main battlefield and arrived at an open jungle area. The towering Xenos hive city housed a large population. Their water source was 100 kilometers away, with underground pipes leading directly to the Xenos hive city. Standing above the pipes, even through the soil, one could feel the vibrations. The Xenos are under siege. They are extracting water resources to ensure a sufficient supply. We need to be fast. These pipes will be shut down before long. The Xenos aren't fools. Onesimus urged the Adeptus Mechanicus personnel to act quickly, digging through the soil to access the pipes. The 10 of them were to enter the city along the water flow, giving the entrenched Xenos a surprise. In the Genofather's first major battle, the cold hearts of the Sons of Destruction felt a hint of urgency, not daring to relax in the slightest. In the Xenos hive city, the Psychnuan priests guided their kin's psychic energy, continuously resisting the human world's attacks from space. They only needed to hold on a little longer, and reinforcements from the nearest city would arrive. Then, once the city gates opened, they would flank the humans outside with the reinforcements, making their defeat inevitable, forcing them to slink away in their spacecraft. This had been the Psychnuan race's rule of war for thousands of years. Relying on their unique psychic talents, they conquered one human world after another, enslaving humans as livestock. As for the psychics among humans, the priests had confined them to towers, extracting their psychic energy to maintain the barrier and resist their own kin's attacks. At the current rate of consumption, the barrier could hold for a long time, long enough for the humans to be completely defeated and for their filthy feet to leave salts. Bang! With a loud bang, the water pipe, cut by a laser cutter, burst with pressure, sending the pipe-cutting machine flying. Normally, such a commotion would definitely attract attention and alert the Xenos. But the current situation was different. The landing zone was ablaze with cannon fire, and the sound was quickly drowned out. Sir, the submersible speedboat has been successfully deployed. The Doom Slayers were already waiting inside the speedboat. The Stormhawk lifted the submersible speedboat and lowered it into the pipe. 10 Doom Slayers, aboard 2 submersible speedboats, entered the 100-meter-wide pipe. They piloted their speedboats through the pipe, constantly dodging traps in the passage, heading towards the heart of the Xenos hive. Meanwhile, inside the city, the Psychnuan technician at the water treatment center naturally noticed the pressure loss in the water pipe. It tilted its head in confusion, hesitating whether to report it. The technician didn't understand what was happening. With cannon fire raging outside the city, it was highly possible that the vibration had caused the sensors to malfunction, or even that a damaged pipe had led to the pressure loss. The technician noticed two large shadows flashing across the pipe monitoring screen, completely unlike the usual waterweeds or large fish that sometimes strayed in. It felt very uneasy and finally decided to report the anomaly. At such a critical moment in the siege, even a small mistake could lead to complete failure, and it, being just a small technician, could not bear such a heavy responsibility. An anomaly has been found in the water pipe, possibly an enemy invasion. After reporting the anomaly, the technician's tense nerves relaxed slightly, but immediately became anxious again over a possible false alarm. If the warriors made a wasted trip, it would not escape punishment. Soon, summoned by the alarm, nearly 500 Xenos warriors arrived at the water treatment center, and more were still coming. With the Hive city currently blockaded by humans, and warriors sheltering inside the city, the internal alert level had naturally been raised several notches. Seeing so many warriors arrive, the technician became a little flustered. It was a technical staff member, and if a mistaken report caused the warriors to make a wasted trip, punishment would be unavoidable. Great warrior, please look here. The technician pointed to the screen, where two shadows were frozen, somewhat resembling large fish. It's humans. The warrior leader's beast eyes narrowed, and he quickly identified the true nature of the shadows. They want to destroy us from within. At most 10 people. He cursed, his voice hissing. Damn humans, they attempt to defeat an entire city with a dozen people. Fools. Stupid bugs. Arrogant two-legged white sheep. The leader's curses resonated with the Xenos warriors, and some even clamored, let the humans in, then close the floodgates, leaving them no retreat, no burial ground. Exactly, let them in, then close the gates. The leader warrior stared at the monitoring screen, his eyes burning with killing intent. Let them in, he hissed. I will personally torture and kill these humans who don't know their place. All right, leader. The technician's lizard eyes swiveled, and after a brief thought, found no major problem. There were hundreds of powerful warriors here, so could 10 humans really rush in and kill everyone? So, it extended a scaly finger and disabled the waterway defenses, allowing the humans to arrive more quickly. What happened? Osiris in the speedboat was very confused. Why were the waterway traps closed? The path ahead was clear. He spoke through the psychic link. Speed up. Our mission is vital. Although the Gene Father has other means, we must not disappoint him. They are inviting us. Osiris saw the water gate closing, leaving only a narrow gap, just enough for the speedboat to pass through. This is the arrogance of the Xenos whelps, they will pay a heavy price. As the two speedboats passed through the water gate, the gate behind them immediately closed, cutting off the humans' retreat. The human underwater vehicles surfaced from the giant reservoir, and the Psychnuans at the pool's edge smiled cruelly. The moment the Doom Slayers opened their hatches, the anticipated attack did not come. They slowly stood up, only to see ferocious Psychnuans standing by the pool, their eyes red and faces grim. Get ashore first, establish a foothold, and gain an advantage. Osiris ordered through the psychic link. The Doom Slayers knew these Xenos wanted to play a game of torture and slaughter. The Psychnuans also saw 10 warriors in dark black armor rise from the speedboats floating in the pool. They looked taller and more threatening than those outside the city, and their equipment was more refined. Who, Mons? The Psychnuan leader's voice was awkward, and it even waved from the pool's edge. Welcome to approach death. The warriors said nothing, merely silently piloted their speedboats closer to the edge of the pool, looking as if they had accepted their fate. The leader could understand the despair of being surrounded, that indifference to life and death, the sorrow of a heart that had given up, knowing that no struggle would be of any use. Osiris shook his head. The most difficult first hurdle of entering the city was passed, and now the lizards were actively making way, allowing the Doom Slayers to come ashore. He even felt like thanking the Xenos for leaving the leader's entire family intact. When the 10 black armored warriors came ashore, the leader warrior raised his head, his gaze condescending, intending to deliver a speech about mercy. Humans. Slay these ignorant Xenos scum. Let them learn the wrath of the Doom Slayers. Osiris' roar, like a thunderclap from a clear sky, exploded with endless fury in the Xenos' ears. The power of the Doom Slayers surpassed anyone's imagination. They were the embodiment of wrath. One of the most aggressive brothers launched a fierce attack first. He was an unstoppable killing machine. Equipped with blood-red lightning claws on both hands, the longest blade was a meter long. When the disintegration field was activated, he was an undeniable slaughterer. His movements were too fast for the Psychnuans to react. He swung his arm, tearing the nearby Xenos to shreds, and before the bodies could even split apart, the Doomslayer had already knocked it aside. His palm opened, pushing forward, the claw blades like 5 sharp swords in front of him. The warrior's charge was as fast as lightning, leaving only shattered corpses and fragments in his wake. The disintegration weapon in his other palm continuously fired, turning the Psychnuans, who hadn't yet reacted and were still laughing madly, into atomic sparks. Some wielded twin swords, cutting a bloody swath, some swept Xenos aside with halberds, others wielded warhammers, smashing violently. The weapons custom-made by the Emperor's private artisans unleashed a massacre, leaving Xenos' corpses strewn across the field. When the first spray of Psychnuan blood splattered on the ground, more than half of the 500 Xenos had already been reduced to fragments. The 10-man squad of Doom Slayers, their minds connected, acted as one. Their millennia-honed slaughtering techniques were now infused with the most genuine killing intent. The power from the Gene Father was unrivaled. By the time the warrior leader reacted, a sea of red was before his eyes, the blood of his comrades stained the pool. His gaze fixed, he saw only the ghostly figures of the black-armored warriors, along with scattered body parts, and the constantly fading lives of his kin. Only then did he realize what kind of monster his arrogance had let in. ERT. Before he could even sound the alarm, Osiris' halberd aimed, and the disintegration weapon reduced it to atoms. 5 seconds later, 10 Doom Slayers burst out of the water treatment center, leaving behind over 500 Xeno corpses. They were unstoppable gods of war. Their dark black armor was stained with blood, the red lines becoming even more eerie. The Doom Slayers did not roar, did not bellow, their attacking footsteps were unstoppable. They advanced along the Xenos city streets, climbing towards the top of the Hive City, where psychic energy readings were off the charts. The servants' shots couldn't aim, and the warriors' desperate charges turned into corpses. Blood flowed weakly on the main road. The only thing the Xenos could do was use their blood to add some stickiness to the Doom Slayers' boots. This 10-man squad, like a black torrent, rolled through the streets, heading straight for the psychic core at the top of the Hive City, the heart of the Psychnuans' filthy rule. Screams rushed forward. Then death. Xenos warriors from the entire city arrived, but seeing the horrific scene, they were terrified, unable to suppress the fear in their hearts. Slippery blood everywhere, shattered body parts, and comrades reduced to dust. This was not a battle, it was a pure massacre. Their race was lambs to the slaughter, awaiting the Black Reaper's harvest, unable to resist that fate. The deeper the 10-man squad advanced, the fiercer the interception they encountered, but these had no effect on them. The Genofather's gift bestowed the Doom Slayers with endless stamina, keeping them in peak condition. They had no pity, showing no emotion when slaughtering the Xenos, as if cleaning filth. Humans. That's enough. A Psychnuan priest, wearing a feather crown, shrieked. It raised its scepter amidst heavy protection, chanting spells to unleash blue psychic flames. The warp fire ignited upon touching the ground, transforming into towering pillars of flame that engulfed the black-armored warriors. The Psychnuan priest and the warriors protecting it breathed a sigh of relief, finally having halted the black-armored warriors' advance. In just 2 minutes, the humans had slaughtered thousands of elite warriors and countless auxiliary troops. No being could block the humans' path for even 1 second, not even 1 second. Before they could celebrate, the sound of pata, pata, footsteps came from within the fire. The 10 warriors continued to advance, emerging from the blue flames. As their footsteps fell, the blue flames receded, and the psychic energy recoiled in fear of the warriors' will. The Doom Slayers' black armor remained, the blue flames having burned away the blood and filth on it. They were no different from when the battle began. The Emperor forged the Doom Slayers' armor with radiant gold, a rare metal that does not react to psychic energy. Osiris led his brothers forward, the Xenos before them trembling, their weapons almost slipping from their grasp. The blade formed by the Black Warriors was slowly piercing the Psychnuan scales, pressing against their fragile hearts, freezing their courage with icy slaughter. Cover my retreat. I need to prepare new psychic spells. The Psychnuan priest shrieked in a panic, ordering its warriors to cover it. The priest raised its scepter, emitting a sickly green light. It roared, whipping its servants, and the lizardmen carrying its chair scurried backward, their scales scraping the ground with a harsh sound. We must stop the humans. They cannot be allowed to approach the high priest. If we lose the barrier, we are finished. Hearing the priest's urging, the warriors regained their courage, grabbed their high-frequency blades, and charged forward with bared fangs and claws. Continue to advance, Osiris said emotionlessly, calling his brothers to move forward. Although they didn't understand what the Xenos were saying, their panicked expressions suggested their destination wasn't far. Roar. With a strange cry, the Psychnuan lunged again. The first bird gets the shot, the Doom Slayer reduced it to atomic ash, turning it into dust in a flash of light. The Doom Slayers advanced relentlessly, charging too fast. The priests summoned flames could not stop them, lightning and frost were weak and powerless, storms felt like a gentle breeze. In the center of the hive city, Psychnuan corpses fell from the spiraling tower. So much blood flowed down the spiral staircase that the Psychnuan reinforcements arriving from behind slipped in their panic. Weapons wreathed in lightning that disintegrated everything, cleaved the Xenos, body and blade, into fragments, making them die as base as mud. The power of the Doom Slayers even exceeded the Emperor's expectations. At this moment, fighting for their Gene Father, they unleashed power far beyond their usual capabilities. They didn't need to hide, didn't need to worry, they only needed to destroy the enemy before them. At the landing zone outside the city, keen warriors had already noticed that the stable psychic barrier was beginning to waver, seemingly loosening. Legion Commander Locke also noticed it. He immediately informed his brothers, "Get ready, we might be launching a surprise attack soon." The Space Marines immediately prepared their armaments. They were also excited, for the Warhounds were the Empire's best assault warriors. After all the way of slaughter, the Doom Slayers stormed into the top of the tower, the transparent dome surrounded by the city. Osiris cut off the priest's panicked head, pressed it against the security door, and opened the final security door. Humans. The Psychnuan high priest was grief-stricken. It floated in the center of the dome, watching the humans slaughter its kin, then irresistibly burst into the room. The priest was channeling psychic energy, preventing the barrier from fully collapsing and the humans outside the city from pouring in. "I will make you all die with me." The high priest also wore a feather headdress. It was even more ornate, with blue feathers shimmering with iridescent light. The Doom Slayers surrounded the priest from 10 directions. If the Gene Father hadn't needed this Xenos, it would have died 10,000 times over. They quietly watched the frenzied Xenos priest, curious to see what it would do. The high priest felt the contempt and grew even more insane, chanting incantations. Its consciousness reached out to a mighty being in the warp for help, promising to sacrifice countless humans and begging for its arrival. Soon, a look of joy appeared on the priest's deranged face. The mighty being in the warp had responded and was coming immediately. A strange rumble of thunder boomed across the Xenos hive city. The warriors at the landing zone outside the city were a little surprised, wondering what was happening inside. High above, Blazkowicz frowned slightly. He sensed the stench of chaos. Ahriman also looked up, gazing at the star below from the viewport, detecting some change, but not knowing what it was. Within the high platform in the city, a warp rift opened, and evil energy surged out. Ka, ka, ka. Bird-like cries, mixed with ethereal laughter, and a giant bird-like figure slowly appeared. A demon. The Doom Slayers present immediately saw through the true nature of this foul, twisted being, an embodiment of malice from the warp. Let it come out. Before his brothers charged, Osiris calmed them through their psychic link, prevent it from escaping. "Mortal, you called me, I will defeat your enemies for you. Do not forget your promise once it is done." The Lord of Change had arrived. It held its head high, seeing everything as nothing. Few beings in the mortal realm could threaten it. The Lord of Change enjoyed the priest's worship, even calculating how many souls it would harvest. "Take as you please, everything is yours." The priest floated in the air, yet humbly bowed its head, not daring to look directly at the mighty being descending from the warp. Its lowered beast eyes reflected the motionless figures of the human warriors. Those human warriors stood still, not interrupting the ritual. By the time they reacted, it would be too late. The mighty being of the warp would destroy these warriors, then destroy the army outside the city. As the illusory became real, amidst the iridescent glow, the Lord of Change's body fully solidified. The Lord of Change spread its wings, its blue wings shimmering with the light of wisdom. It held a scepter, and wisdom and arcane magic flowed from its fingertips. Mortal beings, worship. Then it saw the warriors below its feet. They were staring at it, and the killing intent in their eyes beneath their helmets gradually surged. It also saw the mark on the warrior's armor, the Crimson Godslayer mark. Cough, cough, cough. The Lord of Change's bird neck craned, and its tongue swallowed the rest of its words between gasps. As if annoyed, its dark bird claw seized the Psychnuan priest's throat, and in the priest's stunned gaze, it offered a benevolent, slightly fawning smile. The Lord of Change's arrogance was completely gone, replaced only by panic. I said I took a wrong turn, do you believe me? The great demon of Tzeentch was truly panicking now. Warriors with the Godslayer bloodline were right before it, being killed by them meant complete annihilation. Their existence erased, their essence plundered, vanishing without a trace. Seeing no response from the warriors, it bluffed. I won't disturb, I'm leaving now, you all carry on. This damned Xenos, clutching the Psychnuan priest, the Lord of Change pondered its words for a second, finally nodding with satisfaction. Indeed, this damned Xenos is all yours. Ignoring the terrified Psychnuan priest, it began chanting spells to itself, preparing to leave the real universe. Its heart was filled with anxiety, only wanting to leave quickly. The scene here was too terrifying. Stay. Osiris' cold roar came, and the great demon of Tzeentch despaired. A spear tore through the air, piercing its bird beak, completely silencing the great demon. Next, its wing was pierced, the great demon fell from the air, and a warhammer shattered its chest. In an instant, demon blood splattered everywhere, blue, foul blood covering the ground. In a dazzling blur, the Lord of Change truly felt life draining away. It glared venomously at the stunned priest. Its still-moving dark bird talons aimed at it, wanting to take revenge with a lightning strike. Another sword strike came, the longsword severing its arm and wing, cutting off the demon's last hope. In its dying moments, the Lord of Change saw a black war boot, stepping towards its head. Osiris crushed the demon's head, feeling a surge of power integrate into his body. He was momentarily at a loss. A normal reaction, you will know more later, Blazkowicz's voice echoed in the psychic link, calming his agitation. I understand. A Doom Slayer punched the priest unconscious, completely shutting down the psychic barrier. Charge. The closing of the barrier was the horn of attack. The impatient warhounds screamed as they charged into the Xenos city. The Adeptus Mechanicus Titan engine, the omniscious avatar, a warlord-class Titan, unleashed its full firepower. Its arm-mounted plasma cannon shrieked with a charging sound, like a human taking a deep breath, then roared forth, and the walls of the Xenos hive city crumbled. The Space Marines' charge followed closely, the tremor of power armor impacting the ground intertwined with the thunderous crash of drop pods, forming an overture of destruction. Drop pods once again descended like rain, plummeting towards the Earth, their targets fixed on the Xenos hive city. It was as if in an instant, the entire battlefield was activated, and the human offensive surged like a wild tide, engulfing the Xenos city. A Doom Slayer's cold voice cut into the comms channel. Landing zone cleared. In the center of the Xenos hive city, 5 Doom Slayers leapt from a tall tower, clearing a plaza. When they looked up, drop pods had already crashed down, and Space Marines in blue and white livery stepped out of the hatches. Purge the Xenos. They nodded to their powerful cousins, admiring the bravery of the 10 heroes, and charged, yelling, towards the trembling Xenos. When the barrier dissipated, the battle was decided, all that remained was the thorough extermination of the Xenos. Mortals and Space Marines streamed through the breaches in the city walls, and new Legion warriors descended from the sky. Warriors of the 4th Legion and 7th Legion arrived via landing craft. They studied the hive city's weak points, helping their cousins and mortals gain an advantage in urban warfare. All units participating in the battle seemed to feel a piece of music. A peaceful melody, composed by the great Primarch, played in an orderly fashion, layered and clearly articulated, a symphony leading to victory. From his battleship, he planned the landing point for each drop pod and indicated the paths for the warriors to clear. What seemed like a casual arrangement ultimately converged into the climax of the music, a perfect symphony of Xenos destruction. The vanguard forces eliminated the Xenos combatants, while the mortals in the rear switched to heavy flamethrowers, clearing every room. All Xenos, regardless of age or weakness, were incinerated in the plasma flames. Only a dead Xenos is a good Xenos. Captain Ahriman. In high orbit, Blazkowicz put down his command. Precise guidance was no longer needed, as the Space Marines could complete the work independently. He relinquished his authority, entrusting it to the Space Marines on the battlefield. They could do it very well. My Lord Primarch. Ahriman knelt on one knee, showing utmost respect for the Primarch. A strange panic surged within him. Ever since his audience with the Primarch, a restless unease had lingered. It was an instinctive fear, especially noticeable when he used his psychic abilities. So Ahriman stood far away, maintaining a subtle distance from the Primarch, which made him slightly more comfortable and prevented any disrespect in the Primarch's presence. No need to be nervous. Blaskowitz lowered his voice, calmly reassuring the psychic warrior of the 15th Legion. He didn't need to ask, he probably knew why Ahriman stood so far away. His presence made psychics uncomfortable, a deep-seated unease, similar to a mortal's discomfort breathing thin air. I need the psychic talent of the 15th Legion to sustain a psychic barrier. Blaskowitz opened the holographic image on the command console. Several warships formed a square in the void, encircling the Xenos homeworld. What exactly do you intend to do? Ahriman stepped forward, looking at the warship positions on the command console. Are you going to set up a blockade barrier? That would be somewhat difficult. The warrior of the 15th Legion was reserved, speaking without the wildness of other Legion warriors, but rather with cautious inquiry. 100 Legion psychics could erect a barrier, but it wouldn't have any practical effect. Ahriman was very careful, explaining from his professional perspective, clarifying the pros and cons to the Primarch. My apologies for not being clear. A hint of surprise flashed in Blaskowitz's eyes, quickly turning into a smile as he rephrased to Ahriman. I need a barrier that severs psychic communication, to block the Psychnuan's communications. That is highly feasible. Ahriman was surprised by the Primarch's magnanimity, able to frankly admit his own mistake. His superhuman mind raced, and after a moment of silence, he replied to the Primarch, the mission is feasible, and my brothers and I will certainly accomplish it. It must be done. Blaskowitz's expression subtly hardened as he made his demand to Ahriman. The success or failure of this operation depends on you. He clicked on the Xenos Hive City, where the sorcerer's tall tower stood. This tower has the effect of amplifying psychic power. It can draw on the Psychnuan's psychic energy to help you. Ahriman's eyes lit up at the sight of the Xenos device, and his admiration for the Primarch's foresight and meticulous strategy grew. I can assure you with certainty, it will be no problem at all. Go and prepare quickly. Blaskowitz nodded to Ahriman, signaling that he could leave at any time, then looked at the two Legion representatives beside him. Breaker of Cities, Frix of the 4th Legion, and Appius of the 7th Legion. Blaskowitz called out to the two Legion representatives, speaking their names. Please, Great Primarch, issue your commands. The two warriors knelt on one knee, their voices as cold as steel and as resilient as rock and grit. Rise, for I have an important task to entrust to you. Blaskowitz looked at the two warriors, bidding them to stand and await orders. We will never fail to live up to the Primarch's expectations. Breaker of Cities, Frix, and Appius, the Legion warrior, promised the Primarch in unison. Come look at this. Blaskowitz called them closer, and a complete image of the Xenos Hive City was displayed. The warriors, clad in raw steel and bright yellow armor, focused intently on receiving the Primarch's instructions, not daring to miss anything. I need Frix to construct fortifications, to make the Xenos city hold out for at least 3 months, and Appius to study the city's structure, preparing to capture and attack the next city. Blaskowitz clearly stated his requirements, then looked up at the two Legion representatives. Do you have any objections? My lord, Appius of the 7th Legion spoke with some hesitation, kneeling before the Primarch. Please forgive my presumption, but did you perhaps say that in reverse? Breaker of Cities, Frix, also knelt, though he said nothing, expressing the same sentiment. During the glorious Great Crusade, the Astartes leveraged their genetic advantages, earning legends and renown for their legions. The 4th Legion were siege breakers, and the 7th Legion were architects. One excelled at attacking and capturing strongholds, the other at building fortifications. They were like natural opposites, the destroyers and guardians in the Emperor's design. Now the Primarch was asking the legions to take on each other's roles, which made it difficult for them to understand, even leading them to believe the Primarch had made a mistake. I did not speak incorrectly. Blaskowitz helped them rise, looking at the warriors of vastly different styles, offering his encouraging affirmation. You absolutely can do it well. He placed his hand on Frix's shoulder, making the latter feel flattered. A siege breaker must understand a city's defensive weaknesses to shatter strong fortresses, so why can't he build a fortress without weaknesses? The Primarch's words made the breaker of cities' body tremble. He lowered his head, pondering his words intently, his eyes constantly flashing with insight, as if he had received some revelation. The same applies to you. Blaskowitz looked at the 7th Legion warrior. The best guardian knows a city's weaknesses, so why not use this talent to reflect on the weaknesses of enemy fortresses and capture strong cities? After hearing the Primarch's words, the representatives of the two legions exchanged glances, and as their eyes met, intense sparks seemed to fly. We will never fail the duty given by the Primarch. They knelt on one knee again, then bowed and exited the bridge to carry out the work the Primarch had commanded. The two Legion representatives, inspired by the Primarch's words, suddenly felt a clarity like the clouds parting to reveal the moon. Both were eager to put their new insights into practice under the Primarch's witness. Soon, Blaskowitz's orders were swiftly relayed, and the four legions worked methodically, preparing to defend the city exactly as the Primarch had planned. Blaskowitz personally led the Doom Slayers and the 15th Legion warriors to descend to the planet, arriving at the High Priest's tower. Primarch. As the tall figure entered the dome, the Adeptus Mechanicus Biosage immediately stepped forward. "We have prepared everything you commanded." Blaskowitz nodded, looking at the crudely set up operating table. The Psychnuan High Priest had already lost consciousness, with surgical marks on its head. Their body structure, though different from ours, is still traceable. The Biosage raised a mechanical appendage, projecting a holographic image. "We have removed the thinking part of its brain. It will now obey our commands." Ahriman. Blaskowitz called the Legion psychic, instructing him to begin controlling the Xenos, using their species' psychic communication to transmit psychic signals across the star sea. For technologically undeveloped species, interstellar communication is extremely difficult. The Psychnuans use psychic communication to contact their kin light years away, maintaining basic communication. What Blaskowitz intended to do now was to hack into the Xenos communication network and send a distress signal, calling all Xenos warriors back to their homeworld for rescue. Ahriman followed the Primarch into the dome, and he quickly noticed the unusual bloodstain on the circular carpet. The dome was not broken, there were no drag marks of bodies, and a giant beast with an astonishing amount of blood had vanished without a trace. He had no further questions, knowing the importance of speaking cautiously in the presence of the Primarch. Ahriman knew that every legion had its secrets, even his own 15th Legion harbored unspeakable ones. The Psychnuan High Priest was placed in the center of the dome, surrounded by warriors from 13 legions. They removed their leather gloves, spread their hands with fingers aligned, guiding their psychic power to soothe the rampant force. A strange look flashed in the eyes of the 15th Legion warriors. When guiding psychic power at high intensity, the terrifying physical mutations did not appear, and the psychic energy was no longer rampant. It was like a docile sheep, following the shepherd's lead, walking steadily along the designated path. This anomaly did not last long. They poured their power into the Psychnuan priest's body, making it float in the middle of the ritual. It can begin. The Warhound's legion, waiting below the tower, threw the Psychnuan warriors, whose limbs had been broken, into the psychic extraction machine at the Doom Slayer's signal. They were terrified but powerless to struggle. Once the executioners who dictated the fate of human psychers, they were now lambs to the slaughter, fear engulfing their sanity like a tide. A purple halo spread along the tower, eventually converging at the dome, forming a terrifying force. "Call for help to all our kin." Ahriman's voice trembled. He had never guided such a vast power. With psychic light flashing in his eyes, he used the Psychnuan language he had read to command the Psychnuan priest, make them return at all costs. Having lost its prefrontal lobe, brain tissue, the Psychnuan priest was like a puppet, manipulated at will by an external force. It woodenly raised its arm and numbly uttered a few syllables. "Call for help, homeworld attacked, return to homeworld at all costs." As the language was completed, Ahriman guided the psychic energy, pouring it into the Xenos' body. Boom! A purple light shot into the sky, disappearing beyond the planet's atmosphere. Accompanying the distant psychic energy was the unique psychic fluctuation of the Psychnuans, mixed with a distress signal, spreading to their colony worlds. The Psychnuan main city also received the message. They widened their eyes, immediately understanding humanity's intention. Surround and strike. But not a simple surround and strike. Humans now occupied the homeworld city, using false information to trick the colonial troops, allowing them to harvest the outer worlds with minimal cost. Using strong ships and powerful cannons, they would eliminate the elite warriors of their race in the void. The high priest immediately summoned the priests, preparing to initiate a ritual to reissue commands, but saw a translucent barrier rise. "Damn humans." The high priest's voice was venomous, cursing with the most malicious words as the barrier cut off communication. "Inform our kin to throw all human psychers into the spires, drain them to send out warnings." He thought of a countermeasure, using immense psychic power to break through the barrier and notify the colonies not to act rashly. The priest's countermeasure was normal, but he overlooked an important factor. "High Priest, human warships are above us." The subordinate's report was like a death knell. The high priest's fine scales flared open, hissing as his body swayed precariously. Raise the barrier, he said weakly, telling the priests to raise the psychic barrier. The fate of the race, in the humans' intricate calculations, was heading towards the brink of destruction. 6 Xenos hive cities, 6 main cruisers. They were parked in high orbit, an altitude difficult for the Xenos to counterattack, unleashing orbital strikes at will. Dense arrays of lance beams bombarded the ground continuously, forcing the Xenos to expend vast energy to erect psychic barriers, leaving them no time for other matters. At this moment, the fate of the Psychnuans was sealed. They relied on their powerful physical bodies to plunder the old human worlds, acquiring various technological resources. However, their own technology had not developed. They relied entirely on their innate psychic talents. Having been too comfortable in an environment without strong enemies for too long, the external factors that promote war technology advancement were absent, leading to their demise. Success by psychic power. The Psychnuans did not need power armor, their thick scales could resonate to withstand gunfire. A simple intimidating gaze, a projected illusion, could strike fear into enemies, and the priests' spells could even achieve interstellar communication. Failure by psychic power. Without psychic means, or if restricted by opponents, their combat effectiveness was greatly reduced. The only powerful threat to humans remaining was the millions of elite warriors unafraid of gunfire, and billions of combat servants. As psychic communication transmitted across the stars, on the Hierophil, Leman Russ sensed the burst of psychic energy. He abruptly rose from his throne. My brother has succeeded. Russ, beast-like eyes flashed with excitement. He crushed the wine glass in his hand. Now it's our turn to perform. Notify all fleets. When you discover lizard ships, do not rush. Wait until they approach the Mandeville Point before attacking. The Mandeville Point is a stable warp jump point in a star system. Entering or exiting a star system from here would not affect the star system's structure, avoiding a series of catastrophic consequences. At the same time, pay attention within the star system to prevent them from entering the warp in an emergency, regardless of the cost. Not a single one can escape. The Wolf King gnashed his teeth, almost threateningly. This is my promise to my brother. Another Primarch, leading his Genisons, joined the battle, intercepting enemies in space and eliminating enemy reinforcements. The fleet attacked like a pack of wolves, searching for enemies in the starry sky, hunting in the hunting grounds. On the Xenos homeworld, Salt's 2,000 warriors of the 4th Legion, inspired by their Primarch, began to modify the Xenos city-state. They dismantled the irrational, replanned the city, and gradually built fortresses that eliminated all weaknesses. Soldiers of the 7th Legion patrolled the city, searching for irrationalities within it, recording them as means to attack the Xenos. In this process, the 2 legions, whose roles were swapped, helped each other identify shortcomings and filled gaps, fostering mutual understanding and friendship. All the landing forces entered the city, assisting the legions in building defenses and clearing the remaining Xenos deep within the city. Everything was in full swing. The various legions were highly motivated, collaborating to rapidly expand their gains. Blaskowitz left the dome, instructing Ahriman to send distress signals irregularly, and also left a Doomslayer to prevent any overstepping actions he might take. Psychers are always full of curiosity. Reading a priest's memory and glimpsing the warp's great powers is dangerous. At the highest point of the city, overlooking the entire city, was the High Room, which was kept impeccably clean. The Primarch was staying there, serving as his temporary command post and residence. In a rare moment of leisure, Blaskowitz found the corpse of a Psychnuan warrior, lit a bonfire, and displayed his culinary skills. His tall figure leaned by the fire, cutting meat from a chopping board, laying slices onto the grill. Here were high-ranking space marines, leaders of mortal legions, and the red-robed Adeptus Mechanicus. I actually don't like fighting, Blaskowitz said, grilling meat and distributing it to the high-ranking officers of various armies, recounting some past events. I like farming and enjoying the harvest. I like traveling and broadening my horizons. The Space Marines took the grilled meat from the Primarch, savoring the Psychnuans' fearful memories, their tongues seeking the delicious aroma in the muscles. They listened quietly. What the Primarch said was true, he indeed yearned for such a life. After the Great Crusade, perhaps you can finally rest. Karn was enjoying the moment. He had been invited to the banquet for his bravery in combat, to taste the grilled meat personally cooked by the Primarch. Everyone at the banquet felt immense respect in the Primarch's warmth. They felt the extraordinary greatness of the Primarch, and also got to know him in his everyday life, to understand the brilliant human ordinariness that still existed within his great soul. We look forward to that day. Blaskowitz smiled gently. He knew in his heart the direction of the Great Crusade and the Emperor's plans for the future. The Great Crusade might end, or it might never end. A simple barbecue banquet, because it was hosted by the Primarch, made it meaningful. Space Marines and mortals chatted freely, and even Adeptus Mechanicus personnel participated, sharing the dangers and glories of the battlefield. A brief banquet soon ended, and everyone quickly dispersed, leaving only the Doom Slayers and their Gene Father. You may also leave. Blaskowitz sat alone in front of the grill. Despite the guests having left, he continued to turn the meat slices with focus. This banquet is not yet over. Seth narrowed his eyes at these words. He glanced at a corner of the room, then ultimately chose to leave. The Doom Slayer had never relaxed for a moment. During the banquet, he keenly noticed the Gene Father looking at that empty corner 3 times. 2 comments 0 vote. TRAZYN. When only Blaskowitz remained in the room, the fire crackling, he looked at the empty corner. Come out, you cannot escape my sight. You actually knew of my existence. With a synthesized mechanical voice, green light flashed in the space, and a humanoid machine emerged from a spatial rift. I was contemplating in the dimensional rift, whether your gaze was unintentional or deliberate, but there's no need to dwell on it now. The newcomer had a steel body, a tall, lead-colored metal frame, a head taller than an Astartes. It abandoned the traditional robot appearance, resembling more a coffin-shaped chest covered in thick metal, emblazoned with a golden hieroglyphic seal. Inside its chest cavity, mechanical organs made of pipelines were coiled, and an eerie green light emanated from its hollow eye sockets and mouth. The raised metal behind its head was like a hood, its shoulder pads were remarkably broad, and the dark green cloak on its back hung motionless, like a solidified, gloomy lake. It was like an ancient mummy from Terra, wrapped in a high-tech shroud, inscribed with mysterious hieroglyphs. The robot was elegant. One hand held a scepter, the other a green orb. Elegance transcends race, it is a quality of bearing. Undoubtedly, the machine's posture was that of an elegant gentleman, its cold green eyes carrying a hint of scrutinizing pride. It seems you discovered me long ago. Your unrestrained gaze betrayed you. Blaskowitz narrowed his eyes, examining the guest. He picked up a piece of steak with his knife, inviting the uninvited guest. Care for a bite? Quote. The cold, lead-colored machine paused for a moment. Its iron face showed no expression, but confusion flickered in its eye sockets. It re-examined the human before it, assessing whether it was a jest or some other form of probing. In my current form, I have lost my taste organs, but I am willing to accept your invitation. The machine's voice was cold, a chill devoid of a soul's warmth, yet it possessed a contradictory composure and elegance. It released its grip, and both the scepter and the green orb floated in the void, while its body settled steadily at the edge of the barbecue area. The warm fire illuminated its cold shell, reflecting a soft glow from the soulless, frigid machine. It took a plate, its movements precise as if demonstrating a classical etiquette textbook. The undying Trazyn. Trazyn introduced himself to the person before him, using a knife and fork to dissect the grilled meat, bringing it to its mouth, which could not chew. As a green light flashed, the grilled meat, which should have fallen from its hollow mouth, disappeared. It's delicious, I like it very much. It nodded slightly, as if truly enjoying the meal. Blaskowitz Novik. Blaskowitz returned the courtesy of a self-introduction. He observed the machine before him, naturally aware of its identity, and couldn't help but ask curiously, did you taste the flavor, or did data tell you what it should taste like? You've hit the nail on the head. Trazyn put down the plate, and from somewhere produced a cloth, elegantly wiping the corners of its mouth. My equipment analyzed the seasonings, calculated every variable, and told me what it tasted like. That's quite pitiful. Blaskowitz bit into a piece of meat, grease dripping everywhere. Quote. Pitiful. Trazyn's vocal frequency suddenly dropped, like an old gramophone skipping. According to the emotional simulation protocol, I should indeed acknowledge that. It was lamenting that its powerful body, composed of metal, could no longer touch reality. All external sensations were simulated by its bodily equipment, cold perceptions transmitted by data. Necrontyr. Blaskowitz identified the machine, an ancient and powerful race, the instigators of the war in heaven. A completely dead race, cold machines without souls, a living, dead race. Now they are Necrons. The dead race lives in mechanical bodies. The war in heaven 60 million years ago had no victors, two powerful races utterly perished. You've been observing me for a long time, is there something you need? Blazkowicz quietly watched Trazyn. Since stepping onto the planet, he had felt eyes prying on him. Not sensing any threat, Blazkowicz hadn't revealed its presence, busy with various tasks. Now that he was free, he naturally had to deal with it. Having a peeping Tom around wasn't a good thing. Necrontyr. Trazyn's synthesized voice held a hint of surprise, green light emanating from its cold eye sockets, its electronic voice simulating nostalgia. I haven't heard that name in a long time, it must be 60 million years now. Cough, 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 cough. Its shoulders shook as it chuckled, its voice synthetically reminiscing. It seems you've encountered an extraordinary being. A big toad. Blazkowicz shrugged indifferently, openly admitting to having seen the old ones, hiding from disaster in the ethereal void. How pitiful. Trazyn sighed at the fate of the old ones, not asking further, it didn't want to recall the foolishness of 60 million years ago. It raised its mechanical arm, reaching into the void to retrieve a wine bottle, and slightly raised it in a gesture. Wine from the Necron era, would you like to try it? Blazkowicz nodded slightly, indicating his willingness to try. In a strange atmosphere, both sides tasted the delicacies and drank the ancient, treasured wine. I came for you. Trazyn swirled its wine glass. After a brief exchange, it began the formal topic, then shook its head, troubled. Originally, I didn't want to come, but I had to. There aren't many who are awake and capable of action. Blazkowicz listened quietly, offering no opinion, tasting the Necron wine, and listening to the visitor explain its purpose. He had heard Life Forger Primal mention that the Necrons had entered the Great Slumber, with only a few traveling the universe. The undying Trazyn should be one of them, arriving with some special purpose. The self-exiled, the last of the Triarchs, the last silent king, entrusted me to visit you. Visit me. Blazkowicz raised his thick eyebrows in confusion, not remembering any interaction with the silent king. Yes. Trazyn nodded its mechanical head, leaning back in the chair, comfortably crossing its legs. The silent king sent word from deep space, asking me to visit you. A powerful warrior, an indomitable one who raised a sword against a god. The silent king observed in the warp, hearing your fearless oath. He asked me to bring a gift. As it spoke, Trazyn casually waved its hand, and a rectangular coffin, its front engraved with Necron runes, appeared from the void dimension. It lay horizontally before them, suspended in the air. Unrelated to politics, unrelated to anything else. This is a gift carried with respect, perhaps it can help you achieve the feat of god-slaying. Please look. Trazyn stood up, elegantly setting down its goblet, and slowly pushed open the coffin. Blazkowicz slowly rose, marveling at the ancient race's powerful technology, and curious about what the gift was. Fate is truly miraculous. Trazyn's cold voice sighed. I heard that when this weapon took shape, its form was not fixed. After your mark was inscribed, it became what it is now. Blazkowicz subconsciously touched the mark on his chest, an innate rune that he had never understood. The Emperor knew, but he was unwilling to reveal it. Even the Necron technology for reshaping the universe cannot explain fate, it is simply too mysterious. It continued to sigh as it pushed open the mysterious stone coffin, and an unexpected weapon came into view. A shield and an arm guard lay quietly there, deeply captivating Blazkowicz's gaze. The dark green circular shield had a crimson runic mark in its center, and its edges were sharp serrations. Indeed, as Trazyn said, it was a weapon. Paired with it was a powerful arm guard, lying quietly beside the shield, a ball of flame burning in its palm. The Khatan the Burning One, Nyadrazatha. This set of weapons is made from its fragments, possessing infinite power. After your mark was imprinted, it took on this appearance. The shield can reflect all physical attacks, and devour or reflect energy attacks. It can be thrown and retrieved via the arm guard's associated device, making it very flexible. Trazyn stood solemnly nearby, also marveling at the weapon's power. They were born for you, and they absolutely deserve you. Blazkowicz quietly caressed the shield, naturally very fond of it. As a warrior, he naturally liked powerful weapons, conquered by their sharpness. However, he withdrew his hand from caressing the weapon and looked at the undying Trazyn, asking distrustfully, a mere gift. Blazkowicz would not believe that a race from 60 million years ago would send its messenger across cosmic distances merely to deliver him a gift. He didn't think he was important enough to warrant the Silent King's special attention in the bestowal of weapons and equipment. It is indeed a gift, I swear by the past glory of the Necrontyr. Trajan suddenly stood up, its hand covering the ancient mark on its chest, and solemnly swore, "The Silent King only wants to know if you can defeat the Chaos Gods. If this powerful weapon can accompany you in God slaying, it will also carry the glory of the Necron." Really? Indeed. Trajan knew what Blaskowitz was thinking and guaranteed with certainty, "No tricks have been played, it is yours to command." Blaskowitz was half convinced, removing the data terminal arm guard from his left hand and putting on the burning arm guard. The palm holds the burning one's eternal flame, its power never extinguishes and can emit scorching rays, burning all matter in the physical universe. They are miraculous creations, the foundation of the dynasty, fragments of physical universe gods, forged into divine weapons. The mechanical synthetic voice hummed, Trajan's elegant tone chanting a poem, a blessing from the ancient Necron. The round shield was mounted on Blaskowitz's left arm. With a slight shake, the cutting sawteeth on the shield's edge popped out, rotating at high speed, driven by an engine. Where the saw blade cut through space, faint tearing gaps were visible, sparkling with sporadic fire. No experimentation was needed, just looking at it, its destructive power was astonishing. A saw blade condensed from the hatred of the star gods. I truly can't imagine what in the real universe could withstand it. Tisk, tisk, tisk. The Necron's metal head shook, making sounds of admiration, expressing emotions no different from a human's. Naturally, Blaskowitz loved such a divine weapon, but he discovered a new problem and said with some regret, "It's a bit inconvenient." The crucible sword could be tucked into his waist, the super shotgun could be hung on his waist, but he didn't know where to put this round shield. Carrying it on his back was also inconvenient. He understood that for such a powerful weapon, a small flaw was acceptable. You seem to underestimate Necron artisans. What kind of existence was the undying Trajan? It originated from the Necron era, went through the war in heaven, and did not enter the Necrons' great sleep, walking the universe for at least 60 million years. Blaskowitz's slightest emotional change was naturally captured by his mechanical body, analyzing the regret in his micro-expressions. He gently tapped the shield with his mechanical hand, making a clang sound, revealing the shield's small secret to Blaskowitz. The shield has a built-in, transdimensional lasso. When not in use, it can be placed in an alternate dimension, and you can summon it with your armguard at any time. You cannot underestimate any Necron, especially the forging masters. Trajan was not just admonishing but also deeply agreeing, they pay attention to every detail and solve it. Blaskowitz's thoughts stirred, and the round shield vanished into a shimmering green light. He flexibly rotated his arm, "It's indeed very comprehensive. If it's a pure gift, I'm willing to accept it." He nodded. A tailor-made divine artifact, delivered to his doorstep, could not be refused. "You really have no other requests?" Blaskowitz asked again, suspiciously. Although he accepted the divine artifact, he had no trust in the Silent King. The Emperor sent the super shotgun, and he came to this planet. This was a recent example. One who eats from another is beholden to them, one who takes from another is indebted to them. The Silent King was not a trustworthy being. At the end of the war in heaven, when the star gods were exhausted and celebrating victory, he brutally backstabbed them. He gathered the strength of his entire race and forcibly shattered the star gods, who represented the laws of the physical universe. The Necron imprisoned the star god fragments, extracting their endless energy to serve the Necron, thereby humiliating the star gods. Such a decisive and patient Silent King, delivering a gift through an envoy across light years for just a single oath, was very thought-provoking. "There are no other requests," Trajan nodded affirmatively. A green light flashed in his eyes, and he added, "At least, that is the commission I received." One human and one machine looked at each other, seeing deep suspicion, profound apprehension, and distrust in each other's eyes. Blaskowitz suspected the Silent King had another motive, and Trajan likewise distrusted the Silent King. Although their races were different, their attitudes towards the Silent King were consistent. Cough, cough, cough. Trajan covered his mouth with his palm and coughed a few times. Regardless of his ultimate goal, this weapon is indeed very good. Now that official business is done, it's time to talk about a little personal matter. Trajan sat back down in the chair, leaning deeply against the backrest. His elegant and composed mechanical posture vanished, and his entire demeanor suddenly changed. Personal matter. Blaskowitz also sat down. He saw the Necron's elegant demeanor completely disappear, replaced by lewdness. He secretly nodded. This was definitely not an illusion. Trajan's current appearance was indeed quite lewd, even revealing a hint of roguishness and market-like demeanor. Yes, a small personal matter. As everyone knows, I am a collector. Trazen continued to introduce himself, self-absorbed, a preserver who wants all precious existences to endure permanently. At this point, the Necron's metal skeleton couldn't help but sit up straight, exuding strong confidence and satisfaction. Listening to his solemn self-introduction, Blazkowicz tilted his head and asked, somewhat puzzled, is there anything here worth collecting for you? If there was anything worth collecting, Blazkowicz was willing to give it to Trazen as a return gift. After all, he had traveled a long distance from deep space specifically to deliver a divine weapon to him. If there's anything you like here, just take it. Blazkowicz raised his hand and pointed around the room, telling the Necron collector, you can choose any item here. They're all alien stuff anyway. They were all things he didn't care about, so Blazkowicz was very generous, offering them to choose freely. He. Trazen let out a lewd laugh, rubbing his hands excitedly, his gaze drifting towards the door, then I won't be polite. Hey. Blazkowicz raised his hand at him, his expression changing to a serious one, I only said you could pick anything in the room. I knew it. Trazen was indignant, but his mechanical voice showed no surprise. I think I should be more direct, and speak frankly. As everyone knows, I am a collector. He picked up his wine glass, re-emphasizing his identity, and spoke of his proud work. I not only collect historical fragments, preserve extinct artifacts, and gather all precious things worth preserving. Blazkowicz nodded. He looked at the Necron collector, unsure of his purpose. But, Trazen's tone changed, and he suddenly stood up from his chair, grasping his floating staff and green orb. Blazkowicz's brow furrowed, and he immediately became vigilant, preventing the Necron from suddenly attacking. I also like to collect powerful warriors from various races. After Trazen finished speaking, he quickly jumped backward, holding his staff and carefully watching Blazkowicz from a distance. I thought you had some outrageous request. Blazkowicz suddenly realized that he wanted Xenos. He waved his hand grandly, so generously that Trazen couldn't believe it, you can pick any of them. Really? The green light in Trazen's eye sockets flared. He truly hadn't expected the demigod before him to be so generous, willing to give away his offspring. And let him pick freely. Even when his data brain simulated dreams, it wouldn't dare to simulate such a beautiful dream. You can pick any of the elite Psychnuan warriors below. Seeing Trazen's surprised look, Blazkowicz immediately felt that the collector's mentality was quite ordinary. He thought the Psychnuan were very ordinary, not even as powerful as the Astartes, just having a few minor advantages. Not Psychnuan. Trazen was somewhat annoyed, his voice unconsciously growing louder. How could those lowly things enter my collection sarcophagus? I'm talking about. He retreated a bit further, ensuring he had enough distance to escape. Your offspring, a doom slayer. As the words left his mouth, Trazen prepared to teleport. He didn't want to face the wrath of a powerful warrior. However, Blazkowicz didn't immediately attack, which surprised Trazen and made him sigh in relief. There's room to negotiate. Trazen liked negotiations, trading item for item, treasure for treasure. Such transactions could even become legendary tales. A doom slayer. Blazkowicz slowly stood up, a hint of hesitation on his face, even a thoughtful expression. His tall figure stood erect, looking down at the alien from above, his eyes devoid of emotion. Not acting immediately, Blazkowicz suppressed his surging anger, fearing that Trazen would run too fast. Yes, just one. Trazen lowered his guard, let out a long breath, and said cautiously in a softer voice, my request is not high, I can trade an equivalent treasure for it. Blazkowicz slowly nodded, deeply agreeing, and said as if he completely understood, this request is indeed not high. Then how about trading your body for it? Good. Trazen's thoughts jumped with surprise. He completed the calculation in almost a 10,000th of a second, agreeing without any hesitation. He felt this trade was a huge profit, a overlord body for a legendary warrior. Worth it. But he ignored the raging anger in Blazkowicz's voice. After his mechanical mind reacted, Trazen felt his perspective had lowered, level with the floor. Blazkowicz flashed, delivering a punch that slammed Trazen's metal skull into his chest cavity. Eerie green sparks flickered and burst, and the skull, with undiminished force, pierced through the abdominal cavity and embedded itself in the stone floor. If there was no negotiation, why didn't you say so earlier? You ambushed me. Blazkowicz picked up Trazen's head, its top deformed by the immense force, sparks flickering inside, still uttering strange words. He quietly looked at Trazen, his face still calm, his voice cold and stiff. A lesson. Don't ever target them again. Get out! Blazkowicz roared, tightening his fingers and crushing the Necron's metal skull. Trazyn quickly cut off his consciousness, committing suicide. He dared not gamble whether a Godslayer's concept of eradication could eradicate digital thought. After suicide, consciousness and thought could be reborn in countless bodies. He dared not gamble on the outcome of being killed. As consciousness annihilated, the Necron overlord body on the ground stopped twitching, the fluorescent green glow dimmed, turning into a dull metal corpse. 0 comments 0 vote. Download the app for greater interaction. You can chat with me about my writing experience apart from the comments section. Ains Ulg 0WN. Download app now. Exterminatus. Seth. Blazkowicz called out to his sons through the psychic link, telling them to come in and clear away the Necron body. Seth entered with 3 of his brothers, seeing their Gene father standing by the window, a metallic skeleton at his feet. Contain it. Blazkowicz pointed at the metal body of the Necron overlord on the ground. 2 of you will personally guard it and allow no outsiders to approach. Blazkowicz knew the terror of the Necron well. He sealed off the information, not allowing anyone to know of the Necron's existence, especially the Adeptus Mechanicus personnel. The powerful ancient Xenos technology could not be revealed to them, to avoid causing trouble. The former rulers of the galaxy, the Necron, were still in slumber, and no one knew when they would awaken. They must not be disturbed. Once the Necron awoke on a large scale, the human Great Crusade would never end. At that point, the Great Crusade would evolve into an endless struggle between humanity and its former overlords. Therefore, sealing off the information now was the correct course of action. Anyone who privately investigates will be killed. Blazkowicz's tone remained calm, yet his killing intent was undiminished. We obey your command. The Doom Slayers performed the warrior's salute, assuring their Gene father. They also sensed the gravity of the matter, and the killing intent in their Genefather's words was undeniable. The Doom Slayers brought a stasis field, sealed the metallic body into a metal coffin, and transported it back to the Space Marine warship for strict guarding. Blazkowicz looked down from the highest point. On the outskirts of the Xenos Hive City, the 2 legions worked together to build a sturdy fortress. Occasionally, sparks flashed within the city. Most areas had been cleared, but a few hidden corners still contained Xenos, and cleanup teams were eliminating them. He walked to the bed, lay down quietly, and prepared to rest by the fireplace. Although a Primarch did not need rest and could fight at high intensity for a long time, sleep was not essential. But Blazkowicz still enjoyed the momentary peace that restful sleep brought. There was no need to worry about the Hive City's defense. Reinforcements from other Xenos Hive cities couldn't get through. The city was built to give mortals a sense of security, allowing them to sleep soundly at night. Within the Hive City, the psychic shield could still withstand orbital bombardment, but a large-scale army sortie would be suicidal. After all, on a Xenos homeworld, the sense of security provided by a fortress was far more reassuring than the wilderness. Space Marines could overcome physiological instincts, suppress unease with willpower, and feel the security brought by their power armor. Mortals, however, were different. Their weaponry and equipment were relatively simple, they lacked the superhuman physique of Space Marines, and their inner selves were more fragile. With at least 1 Terra-month of station, Blazkowicz had a responsibility to arrange things for the mortals, building ramparts with stone walls to give them the security to sleep soundly. When he woke up, it was already early the next morning. The air on the Xenos homeworld was moist and the morning sun was very warm and comfortable. Blazkowicz sensed that someone was waiting outside the door. Let them in. A message came through the psychic link, and the Doom Slayers retracted their crossed halberds, allowing the waiting individuals into the Primarch's bedroom. My lord. They saluted Blazkowicz, using the warrior's etiquette of Argent Noor. Terra's astropathic messages had spread throughout the human world, and the warrior's etiquette from Argent Noor was gradually becoming popular among the Great Crusade fleets. Blazkowicz nodded in acknowledgement. Frex of the 4th Legion and Appius of the 7th Legion respectfully placed their report dataslates on the nearby table. Both Legion representatives had excited expressions on their faces, as if they had opened the door to a new world. With the Primarch's encouragement, they adapted to work they had never imagined, and they did it very well. Siege masters and architects. The 2 opposing professions cross-checked each other, identifying and correcting deficiencies. Overnight, mortals, in cooperation with Space Marines and with the assistance of the Adeptus Mechanicus, completed the identification and rectification of deficiencies in the outer defenses and were now proceeding with in-depth construction. The hidden talents in their genes, the treasures bestowed by their gene father, were being developed and utilized. Go and do your jobs. Blazkowicz picked up the data slate, saw the impatience on their faces, and smiled, letting them leave. You may summon us at any time. The Legion representatives bowed and slowly exited the room. Before the operation, he didn't know much about the 4th and 7th Legions, having only briefly reviewed the Great Crusade data. Having the two sides work collaboratively was Blazkowicz's bold idea. He planned the overall operation, drawing personnel from both legions, with the aim of being prepared for any eventuality. Discovering that the Psychnuan navy was weak and that humanity had absolute air superiority, Blazkowicz let the two legions work freely. Intertwined, the two legions indeed burst forth with a different kind of passion. My lord, there are some unusual situations in the dome, and I dare not make a hasty judgment. As Blazkowicz was browsing the data slate, Ahriman's cautious voice came through the communication gauntlet. He pondered for a moment, then immediately got up and headed to the dome. The core of this operation revolved around the constantly sending false distress signals, which needed to be treated with caution. Leading several Doom Slayers, Blazkowicz strode forward, reaching the dome in a few minutes. Ahriman had been waiting for a long time. He respectfully bowed his head and extended a hand to guide the Primarch's gaze. Did you eat the roasted meat sent last night? Blazkowicz asked casually, his eyes following the guidance to look at the Psychnuan priest between the psychic arrays. Its eyes were dull, and it sat cross-legged in the middle of the array, with illusory psychic energy wrapped around its neck. It was delicious. Ahriman bowed, deeply moved. Is its power increasing? Blazkowicz frowned. His eyes, which pierced through essence, reflected the dull figure of the Psychnuan priest. Yes, my lord. Ahriman slowly explained. Starting 2 hours ago, not just it, but the power of the Psychnuan kindling, has also been growing stronger. Previously, it took 200 kindling to send psychic signals. Now, that number has been halved. For some unknown reason, their psychic level is rapidly increasing. Listening to Ahriman's explanation, Blazkowicz observed the priest, his eyes narrowing slightly, call the biologist sage up and prepare to treat it. I understand. Ahriman immediately contacted the biologist sage as per the Primarch's instructions, summoning him to treat the Psychnuan priest. Seth came up, his halberd swiftly swung, removing the entire spine of the Psychnuan priest. Blazkowicz grabbed it, putting the bloody spine into his mouth and chewing heartily. As the spinal fluid was absorbed, he was absorbing all the memories of the Psychnuan high priest, all the memories of its entire life. To prevent warp knowledge from leaking and to gain more memories from the Psychnuan flesh, Blazkowicz personally ate the Xeno's flesh. A Primarch's sensory organs were vastly different from a Space Marine's, and the amount of information obtained from flesh was similarly incomparable. Soon, Blazkowicz wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. From the priest's hidden memories, he understood the essence of the Psychnuan's change. The Psychnuan, as a psychic race, was very powerful, and their soul fluctuations were very similar. After their death, their souls would not go to the warp, what the Psychnuan called the soul void. Instead, guided by the souls of their kin, a portion would return to the homeworld, and a portion would merge into the souls of their kin, enhancing the psychic abilities of the living. Because of this characteristic, the Psychnuan high priest's memories showed that when it summoned warp creatures, it promised to sacrifice human souls. Blazkowicz's mind probed for a moment and immediately knew it was Lehman Russ. His massive slaughter in the void caused the Psychnuan souls to return, leading to this change. Good. Playing this trick, are we? Blazkowicz sneered and nodded, not believing the Emperor was completely unaware. He had originally thought this Great Crusade was the Emperor's test of him, a political statement of cooperation. He didn't expect to be waiting for him here. It was not hard to imagine what changes would occur to this planet and the Psychnuan race once 90% of the Psychnuan were cleared. Heal it, don't let it die. You all continue with the original plan. Understood. Ahriman dared not ask more. He saw the Primarch eat the Xeno's flesh, and his expression gradually turned sour. Blazkowicz gave Ahriman some instructions, then walked towards the constructed ground command post, preparing to make some targeted deployments. Notify the fleet in orbit to activate all auger arrays, scan the entire world, and search for dormant giant lifeforms. He sat on the command throne, with a holographic overview of the planet floating nearby, extract Psychnuan DNA and scan for similar types of lifeforms. Blazkowicz silently looked at the holographic image, waiting for the fleet's scan. He suppressed the urge to curse. Excessive aggregation of psychnuan consciousness, under psychic influence, would cause their bodies to develop rapidly, growing into giant lifeforms. They were the embodiment of dead psychnuan, born on the brink of extinction, and in several survival wars, they had defeated all native creatures. Giant psychnuan, without psychic nourishment, would fall into slumber, their bodies transforming into mountains, silently guarding their kin. A world that absorbed psychic energy, a race whose psychic power grew stronger the more they were killed. Clearly, this Xenos, which should have been dealt with by the Emperor, he hid on Terra, throwing the thorny problem to Blaskowitz. My lord, multiple anomalies have been detected and sent to your terminal. 10 minutes later, scans from multiple warships in space indeed revealed many anomalous areas. The lines in the holographic image automatically outlined, quickly marking several anomalies. Across the planet, 14 peaks with life signs were dormant, their activity index steadily rising. A footnote explained why they weren't detected in the first scan. A day ago, the giant psychnuan's life signs were extremely low, filtered out as jungle static, allowing them to hide under the fleet's nose. Blaskowitz looked at the various reports, his mind working at high speed. The fleet's scan locations were accurate, matching the psychnuan priest's memory, with no omissions of the giant insectoid's sleeping places. The giant psychnuan, referred to as guardian god by the psychnuan priest, were estimated to be 400 meters long for the largest individual and 200 meters for the smallest. They were living fossils, slumbering until a species-ending crisis. Now, they were slowly awakening, their rapid growth fueled by the souls of the psychnuan returning to their home planet from the ongoing massacre in space. Fleet, prepare. Macro cannons and lance weapons, aim. Await my command to eliminate them. Blaskowitz called in the fleet from space, pointing out the giant insectoid's sleeping places on the map. He intended to nip the danger in the bud. The planned combat strategy had to adapt to these new changes. Blaskowitz felt little surprise. War is a constant game of wisdom and adaptation. They had to strike while the creatures were sound asleep, their psychic energy not yet full, making it difficult for them to maintain psychic shields. To ensure their destruction, Blaskowitz recalled the entire fleet. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, the shadow cast by the fleet was vast. They entered the planet's orbit and aimed all their firepower at the locations marked by the Primarch. In the psychnuan capital, the High Priest looked through the dome as the human fleet gathered in low orbit. He was guiding the psychic shield, resisting the continuous lance weapon bombardment. The power within him grew stronger and stronger, but the priest felt no joy, as it proved that his kin had been massacred. Anxiety welled up in his heart. He raised his hand and sent a wave of psychic energy into a crystal ball, which projected images of the future. The human fleet unleashed its wrath, bombarding the sleeping places of the ancestral guardian gods. This is impossible. The priest's scream hissed. How could humans know their deepest secret, known only to the priestly class? He was meant to have self-detonated to prevent such a leak, but the Doom Slayer was too fast, knocking him unconscious before he could react. The Adeptus Mechanicus biological savants had then precisely removed his thought organs while he was unconscious. The priest could no longer contain his sorrow. He watched silently as the human fleet prepared to kill his gods. But a crazed smile appeared on his face. He knew that the more humans destroyed, the fiercer the counterattack they would face. Under psychic resonance, the guardian gods would summon storms, cause earthquakes, breathe fire and ice, and shoot annihilation lightning. They were the embodiment of nature, a fierce counterattack during the extinction of their species. When the last of our people die, the world will avenge us. Humans will never be able to colonize this land. Blaskowitz naturally knew that this psychic world was awakening. He urgently summoned his high command and issued the next combat order, to evacuate this world. His strategic objective had already been achieved. He forcefully ordered the Mortals and Legion soldiers to leave. This planet is about to undergo a massive change. Its natural environment will aid the psychnuan, we must evacuate immediately. A department of the interior official resisted, eyes filled with unwillingness. This world, with its beautiful natural environment, had already been planned for colonization. This place seems impregnable, Blaskowitz said, his boot gently touching the ground. Can it withstand continuous earthquakes? We are not fighting the psychnuan, but the awakening planetary will. You must leave, don't give me any worries. Finally, under Blaskowitz's pressure, the Mortals and Legion Space Marines began to evacuate, taking the rescued captives with them. The orderly evacuation was swift. 2 hours later, all portable resources and most personnel had been taken. It's a pity it wasn't fully fortified into a fortress. Before boarding the landing craft, Phrix and Appius looked back at the fortress built jointly by the two legions. We'll have more opportunities in the future. They exchanged smiles before returning to high orbit. Watching the landing craft continuously ascend, Blaskowitz's eyes remained bright, seemingly calm, his heart was not at peace. He was alone, and only one thing puzzled him. Did the Emperor know about this world's situation? You all leave too, Blaskowitz said to his Genisons. From now on, I might not be able to look after you. We are willing to accompany you. Osiris stepped forward, vowing to follow his Gene father to the death. No, Blaskowitz returned their smile. This isn't a farewell, I merely face the power of the stars. This battle is not one you can participate in. It's fine, it can't harm me. He waved his hand again, urging them to leave quickly. Just watch my performance. You must return safely. The Doom Slayers could not refuse. They turned and left, boarding a Stormhawk to return to high orbit. Blaskowitz had to stay behind to resolve the hidden danger of the Salt's world. Without completely eliminating the world's will, even if all the Psychnuan were killed, new psychic species would emerge. He raised his hand and retrieved a shield from the warp, then opened the communication channel. Begin bombardment. The Primarch's order was conveyed. In orbit, the battleships, macro cannons ignited, firing at the sleeping giant insectoids. The glow of lance weapons lit up the sky. The ground beneath Blaskowitz's feet trembled, the entire world shook. A projection popped up on his armguard, showing the results. The sleeping giant insectoids were completely annihilated. Who? A mournful wail echoed through the atmosphere. The awakened giant insectoids, their psychic shields not yet fully deployed, were instantly annihilated. With their death, the entire world was swept by howling winds, like a mother weeping. Thunder roared, torrential rain suddenly fell, and the earth trembled, accumulating sorrowful power. What a pity for the masterpiece of the two legions. He sighed, then strode out of the Xenos Hive City, leaving behind the fortress. Blaskowitz stood outside the Hive City wall. He raised his right hand and summoned the Crucible Sword from the warp. A circular saw shield in his left hand, the Crucible Sword in his right. His tall figure stood, facing the storm and thunder, his cloak flapping in the wind. He nodded slightly as if looking down at the entire planet. Come, you wretch. Face me. His face was solemn, his eyes shining with fearless light, confronting the planet's enraged will. You dare to oppose me. Refuse human rule. Today will be the day you die. Blaskowitz knew what he was about to face, but the planet's will and the Psychnuan High Priest did not know what kind of being their enemy was. When the mortal forces retreated to high orbit, they saw the drastic changes on the planet below and couldn't help but feel a chill of fear. The emerald green jungle world, with storm vortices visible to the naked eye, was advancing towards the Hive City captured by humanity. Storms of a scale that should not occur on a jungle world were gathering, progressively destroying the traces left by humanity. Thunder, storms, hail. Ship auspexes issued frequent warnings, and the natural disaster level continued to climb. Officials from the Department of the Interior finally understood why the Primarch needed them to leave, why they had to evacuate the planet. To contend with the planet's natural environment. The Primarch was not exaggerating. With a simple sentence, he conveyed a terrifying truth. If the evacuation had not been timely, the landing forces would have been completely annihilated, swallowed by the enraged planet. The Doom Slayers stood before the viewport, silently looking down at the Xenos homeworld. Their Gene Father was fighting alone on the surface. He should be fine, he is a great Primarch. Karn stood beside his tall cousin, his helmet clipped to his waist, looking at the unpredictable planet below. Watch your words, Karn. Seth was a fiery warrior. He turned around and looked down at Karn, who wore blue and white armor. Not, should be, the Gene Father will surely triumph. There is no, should, or, might, in his path. Those who block him face only death. Even the will of the world will kneel before the Doom Slayer. The Doom Slayer's strong attitude made Karn frown. He didn't understand whether this was arrogance or obsession. No one could withstand the storm, not even a Primarch. To avoid provoking his cousin, Karn silently nodded, no longer offering any opinions. Blaskowitz, shield raised and sword in hand, advanced against the storm. The hurricane failed to slow him in the slightest. His cloak billowed straight behind him in the hurricane, but he was not in a hurry, moving step by step towards the eye of the storm. The crucible sword pointed to the ground, its corner blade scraping against the surface with a rasping sound. Its unstoppable blade, however, struck sparks, and the red lightning of the blade licked the ground like tendrils. The crucible sword pierced the will of the planet, slowly scraping its majestic will, sending a challenge to it like a provocateur to its target. The planet's atmosphere surged, storms howled in collision, and the planet felt threatened. It was very uncomfortable now. Various powerful, malevolent concepts were peeling back its skin, eagerly preparing to feast. That outsider did not leave with his tail between his legs like his compatriots, instead, he brazenly challenged it. Blaskowitz's face was frosty, he sensed the planet's will expanding, his mind rapidly calculating. Looking at the current situation, Russ had received the astropathic message and was more rapidly encircling other world Psychnuans. When the souls of most Psychnuans gathered and the planet's power reached its peak, that would be Blaskowitz's moment to act. Psionics is a wondrous power, infinitely useful when applied correctly. Psionics is also dangerous, its backlash extremely fierce. All along, the Psychnuans had been protected by the world's will, enjoying the convenience of psionics. Blaskowitz intended to exploit the Psychnuans' characteristics, making them taste the bitter fruit of being betrayed by psionics. In the outer void, Lehman Russ was on the Hierofkal. He stood before the command console, continuously issuing orders. He had received his brother's astropathic message and was aligning with his brother's plan. When a Primarch takes things seriously, his extraordinary mind operates rapidly. Russ' commands were dense and fast, more numerous than the spittle he sprayed. Blaskowitz's lure the snake out of its hole strategy was very effective. On the Psychnuans' colony worlds, 80% of the soldiers left their planets, entering the void that became the Space Wolves' hunting ground. The Psychnuans' crude warships were powerless to resist. To call them warships was generous, as they were essentially houses made of stone and steel, fitted with human warp engines. Under the attack of lances and macrocannons, the Psychnuan warships appeared even more fragile and vulnerable. The breaches torn in the warships were fatal to the Psychnuans. Internal pressure instantly became imbalanced, spewing the Psychnuan warriors out of the ship. Without dense bulkheads, their warships were as fragile as eggs in space. Lances, macrocannons, boarding actions. The Wolves' simple three-pronged attack left the Psychnuans in great distress. The homeworld's pleas for aid were urgent and piercing, constantly urging forces from external worlds to return, at all costs. The various Psychnuan leaders also knew that without their homeworld, they would have nothing. Enduring massive casualties, they fearlessly broke through the human fleet's blockade, attempting to escape towards their homeworld. Unfortunately, while the self-sacrificing surge of a species facing extinction is admirable, it is equally tragic. A Primarch, a war machine created by the Emperor, his personally planned blockade, was like the Grim Reaper's scythe, rapidly harvesting the Psychnuans' passion and lives. Just as Russ had promised, he did not let a single warship escape, firmly gripping the Psychnuans' throat. The glow of lances streaked across the dark universe, thousands of deck serfs loaded macrocannon shells into the breaches. The chanting of the astropathic choir echoed like a dirge, and the cold, precise mechanical prayers of the cogitator arrays intertwined, composing a lament for the Psychnuans' end. Blaskowitz did not walk fast, he felt the storm growing more intense, strong winds pulling his cloak backward. Aside from his cloak, the storm could not shake him. He felt the world beneath his feet transforming, its power rapidly rising, expressing its emotions with increasing clarity. Blaskowitz's gaze pierced the storm, seeing the forest exulting, trees visibly growing, and vines dancing like spirit snakes. He sensed the time was right, resolved to end everything here, then return to Terra to face the Emperor. This world was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. Blaskowitz stopped, his breathing gradually deepening, exhaling power in the eye of the storm. He suddenly took a deep breath, his eyes wide with fury, and endless rage erupted from his throat. Face me. A long roar. The pure fury of this roar, like the roar of a giant dragon in human legends, shook the heavens. For a moment, the hurricane ceased its rotation, and the wind's howl fell silent. The enraged will of the planet was horrified. A tiny human, his single roar, had brought the storm to a halt. The fleet in high orbit fell silent. Numerous auspexes were damaged by the Primarch's roar. Karn's hands trembled, he wiped the sweat from his brow, re-examining the man on the planet below who defied the world. What a pity. Blaskowitz shook his head with a sigh, he raised his right hand, twirled the crucible sword, and pointed its blood-red blade towards the ground. The universe will mourn for you. A planet with a will is a miracle, and today it will completely disappear. I will kill this world. At this moment, the psychic energy reached its peak, it was time to act. Blaskowitz's eyes narrowed, a murderous intent flashing within them. He gripped the crucible sword's hilt and abruptly plunged the crucible sword into the ground. He would kill this world, completely erase its will. The crucible sword's blade sank into the earth. It had long been thirsty, eager to kill all who defied it. The moment the blade entered the earth, it was a long moment. The emerald planet seemed to hit a pause button. The storm ceased, the roars dissipated, the forest fell silent, and all things became still. Who? The world wailed. The painful shriek brought tears to the listener's eyes. It was struggling in agony, unwillingly trying to escape death. No. In the Psychnuan capital, blood tears streamed from the priests' eyes, leaving vivid streaks on their scales. They had never felt such profound grief. Only the priests knew that it was the planet's will wailing, that the Great Mother was dying. Rumbling, the planet's volcanoes erupted simultaneously, glaciers at the north and south poles collapsed, and colossal waves surged in the oceans. The earth fractured, canyons were torn open by subterranean forces, and magma flowed out like the planet's blood. The vitality of the forest faded, its prosperity a fleeting moment. Vegetation rapidly withered, decayed, and then gradually turned into desert. The churning clouds brought cold, biting rain, a chill of death, devoid of the former vibrancy. Humanity was horrified, seeing everything clearly from high orbit. The once lush jungle world, in less than 10 minutes, had regressed into a desert planet. The surface was torn, revealing several massive rifts spanning the planet, and mountains collapsed, falling like the spines of giants. All Psychnuans felt a heart-wrenching pain, a soul-stirring tremor. They involuntarily shed tears, feeling a loss, as if an important loved one had departed from them. In its final moments, the Psychnuan hive city remained unaffected by the natural disaster. They were still safe and sound. The planet was still protecting them, and it was its last act of protection. Beneath the capital, as the planet's consciousness gradually died, psychic energy returned to the giant insectoid. It was transforming, all power converged upon its body, and the giant insectoid's size surged. Not just the giant insectoid, but all Psychnuans across the world, their bodies swelled, and their psychic power ascended. Humans. We shall have our revenge. The Psychnuan priests were consumed by hatred, driven to near madness, their eyes burning crimson with it. Damnable humans. The Psychnuan had only occupied their old lands and enslaved some humans, so why such severe retaliation? They retaliated with mighty ships and cannons, even aiming for the complete annihilation of the Psychnuan race. The high priest gathered all the priests. They chanted spells from the hive city dome, sacrificing human servants. At this moment, they no longer felt reverence, they yearned desperately for a response from the soul void, seeking the power to defeat humanity. But this time, the once fervent soul void remained silent, a cold, empty expanse, as if nothing existed within it. The high priest despaired. Was the soul void afraid of humans? His scales were dull, and though his psychic power was immense, he couldn't dispel the chill in his heart. His spirit is withered as a dead tree. Helpless. The Psychnuan race was now helpless, having lost their great mother, their ancient guardian deity, and with the soul void no longer responding. Sacrifice all our kin. We have no retreat, only an all-out struggle. No one opposed the high priest's decision. The priests all knew that this was no longer about the survival of their race. The moment of life and death had passed. Only the flames of vengeance burned, a fierce desire for revenge against humanity, for revenge against the invaders of their homeland. The Psychnuans' hidden reserves were activated, psychic arrays lit up in various cities, initiating the final sacrifice. Whether Psychnuan or human, the psychic arrays drained the souls of all living beings, ultimately converging in the Psychnuan capital. The malevolence of the Psychnuan and the wails of humanity intertwined, forming an evil psychic power that was injected into carefully selected candidates. This power would help them ascend, to be used against humanity. Blaskowitz's face was grim as he watched the surging psychic torrent above the Psychnuan hive city converge on the capital. I will avenge you all. He murmured softly, mourning the human souls caught in the psychic torrent, their sacrifice buying more salvation. There was no other way. The deaths of billions of humans here would buy the salvation of tens of billions from the Psychnuans' world domination. Blaskowitz recalled the War Council on Terra, and a phrase they often spoke: no sacrifice is unacceptable. Roar. A heaven-shaking beast's roar interrupted his thoughts. As a domineering roar echoed through the sky, the ground trembled, as if an ancient beast had broken free from its cage. And so it was. The Psychnuans' only surviving guardian deity, the ancient beast slumbering beneath the capital, had fully awakened. HMPH. Blaskowitz sneered, preparing to meet the Psychnuans' final counterattack, their desperate vengeance. What is that? In high orbit, the human fleet, constantly monitoring, witnessed a horrifying sight. A savage beast, it burst through the colossal city, emerging from beneath the Psychnuan's capital. Its body exceeded 1,000 meters, a pair of vertical pupils stained crimson with hatred, each scale the size of a tank, psychic lightning flickering between its scales, its sprawling body like a mountain. Human, I tear you to bits. A mournful shriek, imbued with psychic power, echoed through the heavens, its immense hatred palpable even thousands of miles away. Psychnuan stood on the giant insectoid's back. The high priest was seated, floating, and beside him stood the warriors, infused with power, their bodies also massive. On this planet, they were the last of the Psychnuan, yearning for revenge. The high priest pointed his scepter forward, and the giant insectoid beneath him leapt, its mountain-like body vanishing from its spot. The fleet in high orbit, preparing to bomb, saw the target instantly disappear from their instruments. When its trace reappeared, it had overcome the barrier of distance, appearing before the Primarch accompanied by psychic sparks. Macro cannons and lances immediately ceased fire. The Primarch was within the bombing range. A mountain of flesh instantly appeared before Blaskowitz, breathing heavily, its hot breath transforming into psychic flames. The giant insectoid landed 10 kilometers away, lowering its massive body and taking slow, deliberate steps, its blood-red eyes warily fixed on the tiny human. It was as if an illusion, but it sensed a fatal threat emanating from the human's body. Human. Prepare to die. The high priest's eyes were bloodshot. He stood before the enemy who had annihilated his race, grinding his tiny teeth. I will kill you and avenge my people. Go forth. Warriors who crave revenge, tear him to shreds. He waved his scepter, sending the warriors beside him into battle. He himself sat floating on the giant insectoid's back, chanting spells, preparing some psychic support. The last Psychnuan warriors were filled with psychic power, purple flames erupting from their eyes. Clutching purple blades formed of concentrated energy, they leapt from the giant insectoid's back, their forms vanishing in midair. Their psychic power had reached its peak. At this moment, the Psychnuan warriors could freely use psychic jumps. Blaskowitz's expression was unperturbed as he slowly rose from the ground, the crucible sword still plunged into the earth, continuing to erode the planet's last consciousness. He shook his shield, took a super shotgun from his waist, and stood his ground in a ready stance. 6 warriors, Blaskowitz quickly pinpointed their positions. Within the Primarch's perception, the locations of their psychic warps glowed like lighthouses. Die. Here they come. Blaskowitz's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. A Psychnuan warrior leapt out from his front left. It was at least 12 meters tall, glowing with purple light. It wielded a psychic greatsword with both hands, spewing words of hatred, and brought it down on Blaskowitz with immense force. Too noisy. Blaskowitz watched with cold eyes, his left-hand round shield suddenly flung out, his right-hand shotgun simultaneously aimed to his front right. All of this happened in a flash. Blaskowitz's neural reactions were faster than the Psychnuan's, and his human speed was even greater. The moment the round shield flew out, its sawteeth activated, and the hatred of the star god burner erupted. Its high-speed rotating sawteeth ejected an orangered light blade, the essence of the burner, scorching hot sawteeth that incinerated everything. The round shield was faster than a bullet. The sawteeth rapidly rotated into a saw blade, and before the insectoid could react, it cut through its psychic protection and gouged into the Psychnuan warrior's chest. No. The Psychnuan wailed as a searing heat rushed into its body, igniting its psychic power, instantly incinerating its nerves and vaporizing its muscle and flesh. With a large hole torn in its chest and power rapidly draining, it let out an unwilling roar. Before the last echo of its scream faded, the round shield burst out from its back, leaving a charred corpse to slowly collapse. Buzz, buzz. The round shield's engine let out a hungry roar, spinning and flying through the air, heading for its next victim. Bang! Almost simultaneously, Blaskowitz's super shotgun fired. The Emperor's personally blessed bullet ignited, golden light spewing from the barrel, striking the Psychnuan that had leapt out of its psychic warp. Its upper body instantly exploded, flesh and bone splattering backward, its 12-meter-tall body flying backward. Flesh and blood flew everywhere. The immense power of the super shotgun instantly killed a Psychnuan warrior, leaving it no time for a last word, dying a shameful death. At the same time, in the slowed perception of time, Blaskowitz shook his left hand, the flame in his palm aimed to his left. Another Psychnuan appeared, even larger, absorbing the power of its 2 dead brethren and becoming incredibly berserk. Blaskowitz's palm formed an empty claw, the burner fragment in his palm activated, and the Psychnuan's body suddenly erupted in flames. The burner fragment, combined with Blaskowitz's mark, was a psychic bane. Rootless fire instantly erupted, burning away all the psychic energy on the Psychnuan's body, then a searing ray shot out from his palm, incinerating the Psychnuan's physical body into ash. In less than a second, Blaskowitz instantly killed 3 giant Psychnuan warriors, without even letting them get close. Ah! Why? The high priest shrieked. Half of his 6 warriors were dead, yet the enemy was completely unharmed. The damnable human still stood there. Don't scream, it's really annoying. A cold glint flashed in Blaskowitz's eyes, his killing had not stopped. He shook his right hand, the shotgun folded, 2 golden engraved shell casings ejected, and with another forceful motion, he successfully reloaded. He raised his hand and shot one Psychnuan, its 16-meter upper body blasted into a bloody pulp. He turned and controlled the shield, sending it flying towards the warp point, and the moment the Psychnuan appeared, it sawed into its neck. The sawteeth gnawed at flesh, blood, and bone. To make the Xenos die a gruesome death, Blaskowitz deactivated the searing light blade. He would use blood and slaughter to honor the human dead, to avenge the sacrifices that had to be made. Blood spurted from the neck, the spine was severed, and the round shield's engine roared again, slicing diagonally downwards from the neck, disemboweling the hateful Xenos. Die. Behind him, a Psychnuan warrior let out a fierce roar. It was about to succeed. The human couldn't turn around. But the Primarch's speed was beyond the Psychnuan's imagination. Blaskowitz turned the instant it swung its blade, his left iron fist slamming into the Psychnuan's knee. With the crisp sound of bone breaking, the Psychnuan's leg suffered a massive impact. It spun in terror in the air, finally landing headfirst. The Psychnuan was dizzy and disoriented, only feeling a hand grasp the back of its neck, then a shotgun shoved into its mouth. Die! Xenos who dared to enslave humanity. Blaskowitz pulled the trigger, the shotgun shattering the Xenos. Its entire spine and tail were obliterated, leaving its belly and limbs sprawled on the ground. The last Psychnuan warrior appeared, strengthened by the deaths of its kin. It had begun its transformation into a giant insectoid. 20 meters tall, it roared with a cry for vengeance. It leapt from Blaskowitz's left, psychic sparks exploding, its savage body erupting with explosive power. The final Psychnuan warrior charged forward with a sorrowful determination. With every step, the earth trembled, yet the human before it remained unmoving. Blaskowitz felt its tragic grandeur, the Psychnuan's sorrowful charge. He nodded in understanding, then decided to send it on its way. 2 gunshots rang out. Blaskowitz fired quickly and reloaded even faster. 2 shots shattered the Psychnuan's knees, and its massive body knelt to the ground. Bang, bang, 2 more shots broke the Psychnuan's hands, which were supporting its upper body. It lay prone on the ground, its hatred undiminished in its eyes, its dorsal bone plates bulging with rage. The Psychnuan's prone body was almost as tall as Blaskowitz. Aiming his super shotgun at its forehead, Blaskowitz did not hesitate, pulling the trigger on the insectoid warrior. With that shot, its brains exploded, a mix of blood and yellowish white matter spraying all over him. The Psychnuan's enormous body convulsed, its nervous system was not yet dead and continued to send commands. Blaskowitz thought of the abundant psychic energy here, and with a sorcerer present, he aimed his shotgun at the Psychnuan's heart to prevent it from rising again. When he had finished everything and turned, his sharp gaze pierced the desolate desert, locking onto the priest on the giant insectoid's back. Its grand spell was finally complete. A purple lightning bolt descended from the sky, striking Blaskowitz. Blazing white light exploded, the ferocity of the lightning fully revealed. The lightning's reflection in the high priest's hopeful eyes showed him an even more despairing scene. That human warrior walked out, bathed in lightning, without a single injury on his body. What kind of monster are you? The high priest was shocked, his staff nearly falling from his hand, his body swaying unsteadily in the air. Blaskowitz tilted his head, answering calmly, a human. They were far apart, but their voices were transmitted by psychic energy, so distance was not an issue for communication. Liar, you're no mere human, the high priest scoffed, shaking his head. A powerful being, yet he dared not admit his identity. Though his strength was admirable, his evasive attitude was despised even more. No matter what you are, you will die soon. The high priest's voice was exceedingly venomous, the fire of hatred burning fiercely. He would launch an attack, letting his guardian deity tear apart the arrogant human before him. He chanted a spell, and a psychic woven rain extended from his hand, slipping over the giant insectoid. Kill him. The high priest shook the rain, driving the giant insectoid's kilometer-long body. A 10-kilometer distance was covered in the blink of an eye. Boom. 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 With each stride, the giant insectoid's legs moved with immense power, like war drums pounding on the planet. It accelerated to the beat, accumulating strength in its charge, rushing toward its enemy with tremendous kinetic energy. Blaskowitz's expression remained unchanged, his heart never rippling. He regarded the mountain-like beast as nothing. He raised his left hand, gripping the internal plate of his round shield tightly, his gaze fixed on the charging behemoth. Roar. Blaskowitz roared, letting out a fervent, furious bellow. He pushed hard with his legs, his eyes filled with immense determination, and with his shield held before him, he countercharged the mountain-like giant insectoid pressing down on him. The giant insectoid was equally unwilling to show weakness. Its kilometer-long body feared no one at this moment, it could even withstand a human orbital bombardment. The high priest grinned, mocking the human's foolishness. How could the body of any creature withstand a planet, the accumulated hatred and rage of an entire race? Legion members, human captains, and Adeptus Mechanicus personnel on high orbit watched the holographic images, afraid to speak. The entire fleet was silent, with only the anxious thumping of their hearts. No sooner said than done. The roars of the beast and the human intertwined, they collided with unstoppable might. Blaskowitz's eyes were wide with fury, his usually calm voice now burning with rage. He raised his shield with both hands. Let me see what you can do. A shield made from a star god shard, capable of withstanding all attacks. The moment the two charging sides drew near, Blaskowitz raised his shield with both hands and slammed it against the insectoid's low-hanging jowls. Boom. A violent explosion erupted. At the point of impact, there was even a flash of explosive light. The Primarch's figure was obscured by the stirred dust, but the giant insectoid's massive, mountain-like body missed him to the left. It cried out, emitting a wounded, dog-like whimper. Its massive body began to tumble, its physical momentum twisting, rolling and kicking up a sky full of yellow sand. After several tumbles, the gigantic body abruptly stopped, shaking its head to dispel the dizziness as it clambered to its feet. And at the point where the two had intersected, as the dust slowly cleared, a figure stood unyielding. Blaskowitz gasped violently, blood oozing from his shield-wielding arms. In that instant, he had unleashed unimaginable power, using his shield to swat away the giant insectoid. Emperor above. Primarch below. Incredible. The entire fleet witnessed this scene. They couldn't cheer, stunned by the miraculous sight. Mortals knelt, covering their chests with their hands, expressing their deepest reverence. Space Marines also knelt, the superhuman warriors shaking their heads, marveling at their luck. What incredible fortune it was to witness such a sight. The Primarch's power surpassed their imagination. A truly mighty man, he was directly confronting the world. What in the world are you? The high priest's hands trembled, his vertical pupils dilated with panic. In his trepidation, he again questioned the humanoid being. Human. The answer he received was identical to before, equally resolute and calm. If you are human, then what are the gods? The priest sneered, once again driving the giant insectoid beneath him, preparing for a second attack. The ones I shall destroy. Blaskowitz answered the priest's question a second time, with the same certainty, but his tone carried a hint more hatred. I believe you. The priest nodded heavily. He believed the creature before him. When they had sought help from the soul void, there had been no response, very likely due to the presence before them. One strike to decide the victor. I am weary of this battle. The priest extended a tired invitation to Blaskowitz, driving the giant insectoid away. He needed more distance, more power. In this battle, the priest knew that the other side was testing him, not using simple methods to kill him. If that human had exploited his speed advantage and rushed onto the giant insectoid's back, he could have ended the battle before the priest could react. Blaskowitz turned around, patted the dust from his shield, and faced the direction the priest had left. Its speed was tremendous. In a few moves, it climbed 100 kilometers away, then turned and charged back quickly towards him. As the ground tremors grew heavier, Blaskowitz took a deep breath, likewise exerting himself again, and charged towards the giant insectoid. The human roared, the beast screamed. Blaskowitz held his shield horizontally before him, his speed reaching its limit, all his power concentrated on the shield in front of him. This was a clash of pure power. He was facing the might of a world. The giant insectoid lowered its body, its four legs moving at their maximum, aiming its most unyielding forehead at its enemy. Besides this violent impact, there was no other sound. The planet trembled, and the clash of violent forces caused a visible shockwave to erupt from the point of impact. Upwards, it cleared the clouds, leaving a clear sky for miles, Downwards, it tore the earth, leaving a chasm. The giant insectoid's kilometer-long body abruptly stopped, its scales exploding off its body like cannonballs. From supersonic speed to a dead stop, it halted too quickly. Its spine fractured at the neck, breaking through its flesh and erupting from its back. Its abdomen and hind limbs were all crushed into its chest cavity. Its kilometer-long body was now completely compressed, a pile of mangled flesh no more than 300 meters across. Blaskowitz was like a humanoid figure built of blood, supporting himself with his shield, panting as he recovered from his physical injuries. The shield trembled, he knew it was about to reflect power, delivering the final blow to the giant insectoid. The shield hummed, and the mark of destruction suddenly flared, reflecting the giant insectoid's power completely back at it. Boom! The power reflected by the round shield surged out, instantly pulverizing the giant insectoid's flesh and plowing a trench in the ground. The Psychnuan priest screamed. It was like a glowing purple sphere, slowly ascending into the sky amidst wails of agony. With the giant insectoid's death, all its power was inherited by the priest. The frail priest's body swelled, and its facial features erupted with psychic radiance. Now, Blaskowitz did not forget his objective, to trigger a psychic echo when most of the psychic power converged, utterly annihilating the entire Psychnuan race. He cupped his hand, summoning the crucible sword. It had completely killed the world's consciousness, and the world's residual power flowed into the priest. Blaskowitz aimed at the continuously distorting priest in the air and hurled the crucible sword at it, utterly eradicating the Psychnuan race. Blaskowitz threw the crucible sword, its razor-sharp tip cleaving through the high priest, splitting him in two. The priest's body died, his soul was slain by the god-slaying sword, and his psychic energy was infected and gathered by the malevolent concept. After extracting memories from the Psychnuan priest, Blaskowitz learned everything about the Xenos race. Their soul fluctuations were integrated, a dying soul would split in two, half returning to its kin, and half returning to the homeworld's consciousness. Now that the world consciousness was erased, the Psychnuan souls lost their primary carrier, and all their power converged within the high priest's body. Blaskowitz needed this immense power, so he pierced the priest with the crucible sword. The psychic energy, powerful enough to destroy a planet, once again lost its host, seeking similar soul fluctuations, searching for scattered Psychnuan kin throughout the universe. Quick! Brothers, do not fail the Primarch's trust. Deep within the 15th Legion's Gloriana Queen-class battleship, the massive steel deck had been cleared, with no mortals allowed near. Doom Slayers guarded the perimeter, while Ahriman and his 100 brothers inscribed a psychic array onto the deck. In the center of the array were Psychnuan captives, their thinking organs removed, piled up like pigs, serving as a psychic medium. 15th Legion warriors formed concentric circles, layer upon layer, chanting psychic spells, inscribing them into the Psychnuan souls. The Primarch has killed the Psychnuan priest, it's our turn to trigger the psychic resonance. Ahriman presided over the array, and as per Blaskowitz's request, he used the transmitted Psychnuan psychic energy to trigger a psychic resonance that would eliminate all Psychnuans. The Psychnuan's body rapidly swelled, and psychic energy, visible to the naked eye, converged from the void and poured into its body. Its vacant expression gradually turned to pain, as the returning souls of its kin carried a concept of erasure. Inscribe the detonation mark. At Ahriman's command, the Legion warriors all raised their runic daggers and used psychic energy to carve detonation runes onto the deck. The detonation mark was simple, it used the Psychnuan's life as a medium, introducing their unique soul fluctuations. Kill. With the marks inscribed, Ahriman commanded again, coordinating the Legion's actions. The Legion warriors plunged their runic daggers into the array, and the ritual was immediately completed, causing all the Psychnuan captives' bodies to explode. The psychic resonance was detonated, carrying a malevolent curse, seeking out surviving kin throughout the universe. The crucible sword's erasure and the detonation marks inscribed by the spell were mixed within the psychic energy, bringing extinction to the Psychnuans. The Space Wolves fleet was in battle, the Hierarchical bridging, when Russ' brow furrowed, sensing a powerful psychic explosion. Russ actually possessed high psychic talent, though he rarely used psychic powers, or perhaps disdained to use such an eerie force. When the psychic burst swept over the fleet, Russ sensed it, and a smile of victory spread across his rugged face. He knew his brother had succeeded, the psychic resonance would completely erase the Psychnuans, eradicating them at the soul level. All warships maintain a safe distance, boarding parties withdraw as quickly as possible, we have already won this battle. Ha! Russ yawned, his eyelids drooping, returning to his lazy demeanor, and humming a tune, he left the bridge. The rest was up to the Space Marines, his Jennisons were more than capable of handling such minor matters. He needed to prepare roasted meat and mead to welcome his brother, they had to have a grand feast. On various Psychnuan colonial worlds, all Psychnuan eggs in the nurseries exploded, their weak souls instantly annihilated. Then came the newly hatched Psychnuans, the moment the psychic energy swept over them, their tiny heads all exploded. The psychic resonance continued to spread, the detonation mark taking effect upon contact with flesh, igniting soul fluctuations. Souls, from weak to strong, were all infected. Weak souls burst, becoming new conduits for psychic transmission, and the Psychnuan race entered an inescapable death spiral. It was like a pyramid, collapsing layer by layer from the bottom up. Human servants were terrified, their exalted Psychnuan masters suddenly fell to the ground, then their heads violently exploded. The psychic resonance spread like a plague, not a single one survived in the Hive City, and no Psychnuan society was spared. The old and weak, women and children, technical workers, warrior leaders. As the basic society perished, psychic energy continuously converged, and the scene inside the warships in space was even more horrifying. The human warriors retreated quickly, the resisting Psychnuans, before they understood what was happening, suddenly felt a dizzying headache, followed by a sharp pain in their brains. Psychic energy violently poured into their bodies, causing a purple glow to emanate from their skin, their bodies to float into the air, and then explode into fragments. One after another, the power grew stronger and stronger. The race's powerful natural talent now became a death warrant. Finally, the Space Wolves fleet hid in the distance. Space Marines looked through the viewports, seeing a powerful purple energy burst forth in the dark universe. The Psychnuans were completely destroyed. A true extinction, leaving no trace, the entire race utterly annihilated. In high orbit above Salts, Blaskowitz's return brought silence to the warship. There were no cheers, mortals and space marines alike knelt before the Primarch, hands over their hearts, performing the warrior's salute. The reverence was inexpressible in words, conveyed through pure action, expressing the purest worship. Blaskowitz washed away the blood, his body long since recovered, and returned to the bridge in a long robe. He sat on the throne, his calm, deep voice issuing an order, prepare the exterminatus. No one dared to question the Primarch's command, the fleet would execute his orders. The captain knelt before the Primarch, presenting a parchment, the exterminatus issuance order, with both hands. This small parchment carried the power to utterly destroy a world, and very few had the authority to sign an exterminatus. Undoubtedly, the Primarch was among them. Blaskowitz looked relaxed, took the quill, and signed his name, Blaskowitz Novik. Use a cyclonic torpedo. Blaskowitz scanned the exterminatus execution types and chose the cyclonic torpedo. The Primarch's voice was like a spring breeze, but the words he spoke were cold and merciless. He intended to utterly destroy the Xenos world. One cyclonic torpedo was enough to shatter the Xenos world into pieces. Blaskowitz looked down at the world below, deciding to utterly destroy it, to prevent any resurgence. A planet that had given birth to consciousness, though now destroyed, might in the years to come give rise to strange phenomena. So Blaskowitz decided to blow it to smithereens, completely eliminating any hidden dangers. Under the Primarch's personal supervision, the fleet gradually withdrew from the Xenos homeworld, to avoid being caught in the cyclonic torpedo's blast. The Gloriana-class battleship ascended to a higher orbit, dropping the cyclonic torpedo directly above the planet. Fleet officers stood at the viewports, watching the destruction of a world. The cyclonic torpedo was fast. It breached the planet's atmosphere, its superheated warhead rapidly drilling underground, straight to the planetary core. Space is silent, yet most heard a faint explosion. Salts, this once verdant planet, was now desolate. The planet trembled in its orbit, violent power surging beneath its surface, chasms completely torn open, and searing magma erupting from the planet's core. Boom! With a muffled roar, the planet was utterly shattered. Continents broke apart, entire landmasses were flung into space, and magma, like the planet's blood, sprayed into high orbit. At the edge of the star system, a magnificent warship emerged from the warp, heading straight for Blaskowitz's fleet. Such a beautiful sight. Russ, projection appeared, he was marveling at the magnificent death of a planet. Brother, you were so fast, I almost missed the demise of the Xenos world. Russ raised his goblet, glad he had arrived just in time to witness the final act. He watched the planet shatter, fragments scattering in orbit, a smile on his face, but a sense of regret in his heart for the world's destruction. Russ felt regret, but he did not question it. He deeply trusted Blaskowitz's judgment. A wise king, doing this must have been well considered, with sound reasons. Drinking mead and quietly observing, not delving too deeply. His brother had done the dirty work, should he now criticize him? Criticize why he used the exterminatus. Beneath Russ' seemingly savage exterior lay a delicate heart, knowing the limits of advance and retreat. The two brothers had destroyed a race in 3 days, then destroyed their homeworld, there was nothing to criticize. They were both executioners, men with blood-stained hands. Let's go. The matter is concluded. Blaskowitz nodded to Russ. Their business here was done, it was time to leave. Horus is not far, shall we pay him a visit along the way? Russ grinned, licking his lips, inviting Blaskowitz to visit another brother. What is he doing? A glimmer of light flashed in Blaskowitz's eyes, he hadn't expected Horus to be nearby. 600 light-years away, negotiating with a human alliance, persuading them to peacefully join the Imperium. We can go see. Blaskowitz nodded, accepting Russ' invitation to visit Horus along the way. During the Great Crusade, violence was a direct means, conquering vast territories for the Imperium of Man. More often, negotiation was the main theme of the Great Crusade, preventing humans from killing each other. Come. Russ' eyes gleamed green, and he licked his lips. Come aboard my ship, for drinks and meat. If Horus isn't making good progress, we can learn from the Space Marine's combat tactics, he's very experienced. 1 comments 0 vote. Hostile negotiations. Horus was negotiating with a small human alliance, but his patience was wearing thin. The flagship of the Luna Wolves, the Vengeful Spirit, was anchored in the void, as steady as an ancient iron ingot. A giant red crystal eye, the symbol of Horus, was embedded in the bow, signifying that nothing escaped his notice. The Vengeful Spirit was a Glory Queen-class battleship manufactured on Mars, possessing extremely powerful firepower. In his private office, Horus stood by the window, gazing at the distant planet, the object of his intense efforts. As a sign of respect, Horus ordered the Vengeful Spirit and the Luna Wolves fleet to anchor in the void, rather than directly imposing on the planet's orbit. This both showcased the Imperium's strength and conveyed its attitude: the Imperium came in peace. Horus narrowed his eyes, weighing the possibility of war. The negotiations of recent days had completely stalled. A small human federation, having rediscovered ancient technology, was neither too strong nor too weak. These few human worlds were strategically located on a vital trade route, an important passage for the Great Crusade. Because of this, they were insatiably greedy, making all sorts of outrageous demands during peace talks. Tax exemption, power, and sustenance. They demanded tax-exempt status, requested power from the Imperium of Man, and even required the provision of supplies to support the members of the alliance. HMPH. Horus let out a cold snort from his nose, a flash of killing intent in his eyes. Tax exemption might be negotiable, but power and sustenance. Wishful thinking. The alliance, ignorant of its place, demanded that the Imperium build a starport within their system, and that every passing ship pay a tax. They also demanded to join the Imperium's government and gain certain powers, even asking for political authority far exceeding their actual value. After several rounds of negotiations where the other party showed no signs of budging, Horus smiled and left the negotiating table during the last one. He was gathering his legion, preparing to conquer the alliance. If they couldn't understand the imperial truth, then they should understand the imperial fist. Since participating in the Great Crusade, Horus had always fought for the Imperium's interests. When had he ever sold them out? A small human alliance, attempting to use its geographical advantage to parasitize the Imperium of Man. Simply wishful thinking. Horus intended to go to war, to severely punish their arrogance and crush any delusional dreams. He was calculating how to conquer the opponent. The human alliance, military strength was not bad. This had been a transportation hub during the dark age of technology. The planet's orbital defenses were still operational, ancient technology protecting their world, and these were their reliance. A powerful turtle shell, supporting the confidence of the arrogant. Father. Abaddon entered from the doorway, softly calling to Horus, interrupting his thoughts. Abaddon reported to Horus, "Your 2 brothers are arriving." Horus was visibly startled, then his eyes lit up, his tone slightly joyful. Their mission is complete. Yes. The 2 Primarchs have completed their conquests and are preparing to return to Terra. They are stopping by to see you. Good. Horus' shoulders shook as he let out a hearty laugh. My two brothers are indeed extraordinary. How long has it been? They've completed their mission. Less than 72 standard hours. Abaddon thought for a moment, then reported a standard time. Prepare a banquet. I want to entertain them. In the warp, only the Hierophil was traveling, heading to rendezvous with Horus. Having completed its assigned mission, the Warhound's legion departed, returning to the Great Crusade, to their path of conquest. The warriors from each legion returned to their respective legions, bidding farewell to the two Primarchs, looking forward to their next meeting. The Space Wolves had departed, under Leman Russ' command, heading to Fenris, the Primarch's homeworld. Horus will definitely love the surprise I have for him. Russ, with a mischievous grin, told Blaskowitz about his naughty plan to surprise Horus. Blaskowitz's mouth twitched, listening to Russ' plan and his nickname for Horus, shaking his head repeatedly. Horus is definitely in trouble. Russ grinned, a hint of smugness in his expression. The Space Wolves won't go help. You sent the wolves away. Blaskowitz drank his mead, speaking in a joking tone. What if he sends us to the front lines? Russ confided in Blaskowitz that there was another reason for sending the Space Wolves away, to avoid getting entangled in Horus' troubles. It must be said that Russ indeed had his own insights. A simple negotiation that Horus had been unable to conclude for so long surely meant he was in trouble. If the Space Wolves fleet went there, they would inevitably be drawn into it. To be safe, Russ sent the wolves away, and he and Blaskowitz went together to visit Horus. It seemed like a somewhat selfish decision, but Blaskowitz inwardly approved of Russ' approach. The legions appeared harmonious, but privately, competition existed, and the struggle for honor never ceased. Especially the ancient First Legion, they were consumed by it, gradually becoming lost as the Great Crusade deepened. They were obsessively pursuing honor and status, conquering at all costs, fighting recklessly without regard for consequences, often paying a huge price. Russ' wolves, entering the Luna Wolves' mission without clear orders, would be arrogant and rude. Were the Space Wolves there to help? The Luna Wolves hadn't called for support. Were they there to watch a show, or to supervise the battle? Russ' so-called surprise was for the two Primarchs to go without any fleet. None of the Emperor's sons were simple, they were all old foxes with extraordinary minds. Send us to the front lines. Russ snorted, his bestial eyes quickly pondering. Probably not, Horus wouldn't let us go. We are his brothers, not his subordinates. Blaskowitz said nothing, shaking his head slightly and drinking his mead, waiting for the Hierophil to return to real space. It's you though. Russ, seeing Blaskowitz fall silent, immediately changed the subject. You're too strong, my brother. Russ' expression was excited, he shuffled closer to Blaskowitz, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're the definition of strong. He exclaimed, opening a holographic projection, his eyes shining with pride. Who was the tough man in the image, clashing with a 1,000-meter behemoth? My good brother, Leman Russ, the warrior king, the Doom Slayer, Blaskowitz Novik. Leadership ability might still be debatable, Russ said with certainty, arm around Blaskowitz's shoulder. You are definitely the fiercest warrior among our brothers. Tisk tisk tisk. Russ sighed and shook his head, playing the video repeatedly, showing how Blaskowitz killed the behemoth. It's so awesome, it's such a pity I wasn't there to witness it firsthand. Blaskowitz quietly drank his wine, casually closing the image, and slowly said, trouble also comes with it. The chroniclers of the expeditionary fleet had already recorded the footage, and it wouldn't be long before the Imperium widely publicized it. Unique honors often come with these. Russ nodded in agreement, the power his brother displayed far surpassed that of their other brothers. Blaskowitz's Genisons, inheriting their Genifather's combat prowess, far surpassed their cousins. As the lastborn son, many Legion members suspected that the Doom Slayer was another masterpiece of the Emperor, not their cousin. Let's not talk about that. Russ' personality seemed rough, like a savage barbarian, but his heart was full of wisdom, and he quickly changed the subject. As the two chatted about other things, the Hierophil burst out of the warp, arriving in the star system where Horus was located. Welcome, my brothers. As the ship left the warp, Horus immediately sent a communication, a smile on his face, offering a sincere greeting. Russ' fleet had not appeared, and Horus quickly understood his brother's intention, quite pleased with his arrangement. No one likes uninvited guests, especially between legions. We'll come to you. Russ nodded, and together with Blaskowitz, boarded a small shuttle, heading for the Vengeful Spirit. Look at these, returning 30 years earlier really makes a difference. Upon boarding the vengeful spirit, Russ looked at the ship's furnishings, pointing and exclaiming along the way, admiring his brother's displays. As the first returned son, Horus had spent 30 years by the Emperor's side and had embarked on the Great Crusade early. The ship had a dedicated display room, filled with honors and inscribed with stories of great conquests. Russ' tone held admiration, but also a hint of envy. Compared to the vengeful spirit, his hierarchical was like an unfinished house, not yet fully fitted out. The Luna Wolves warriors responsible for the welcome dared not speak, silently leading the two Primarchs. Welcome. Horus had already prepared a banquet. He embraced the two Primarchs with a warm smile on his face. Blaskowitz saw Horus' bright, reflective bald head under the banquet lights. It was indeed overly bright. It seems you've meticulously prepared food and drink. Russ' nose twitched. After the embrace, he sat directly in a chair, scooping food into his mouth with his hands. Horus' eyelids twitched. Although he knew Russ' other side, he was unaccustomed to his displayed savagery. Blaskowitz, however, was very polite. He embraced Horus and sat down with composed grace. Though they were brothers, the stark contrast between the two made Horus shake his head. During the banquet, Blaskowitz and Horus conversed eloquently, while Russ ate in silence, his ears not idle, secretly paying attention to his brother's conversation. The two seemed to have an unspoken agreement, chatting with Horus about ordinary matters, completely avoiding any mention of the negotiations' progress. Blaskowitz and Russ simply wanted to observe and learn, to study space marine combat from Horus. This was their fundamental purpose. They didn't want to get involved, content to be outside observers. Eat and drink, fulfilling their role as guests. When the Luna Wolves started fighting, a careful observation and study would naturally yield results. Horus, however, was anxious. He very much wanted to drag his two brothers into the fray and test their abilities. Blaskowitz was a king who ruled the stars, and his abilities were beyond doubt. The seemingly wild Russ also possessed extraordinary qualities. The two of them, working together, eliminated the Psychnuans within 72 hours, a truly miraculous speed. Horus wanted to test the specific capabilities of his two brothers. As a son of the Emperor, he inherited the Emperor's ambition and desire for conquest. His instinct was to understand his brother's abilities and plan how to interact with them. Watching Blaskowitz and Russ chat, drink, and eat, but not bringing up war in their core conversation at all, Horus felt it was time to take the initiative. He had prepared in advance. While seemingly talking, he subtly reached a leg under the table and lightly touched a hidden, specially treated button. It was quiet, difficult for even a Primarch to detect. A sharp glint flashed in Blaskowitz's eyes. He detected a minute disturbance. His expression remained calm. He glanced at Russ, knowing he hadn't noticed. Blaskowitz immediately understood that Horus wanted to draw both of them into this whirlpool. So he changed the subject. "How are your negotiations going?" he asked, no longer idly chatting, but actively bringing up the topic. Since it was unavoidable, he would seize control. Russ' movements paused for a moment. He subtly covered it up, feigning an indifferent look. He believed Blaskowitz must have discovered something. Horus' heart sank. Blaskowitz's timing was clever, catching him off guard. He was suspicious if his little trick had been discovered. Not ideal, Horus said, though suspicious internally. He remained outwardly calm, shaking his head regretfully. "Their demands are too excessive. I will not accept them, and the Empire certainly will not. Power, resources, independence." Horus used his uniquely charismatic voice to slowly recount his recent experiences. Blaskowitz and Russ listened quietly, understanding the trouble he was facing. They lack sincerity. They want this, and also that. They don't offer anything. Horus summarized the negotiations in a sharp and infuriating way. Negotiation. What negotiation? Russ, upon hearing this, became furious. He roared as he stood up, revealing his sharp fangs. No more negotiations. It's time to unleash punishment upon them. If the wolves were here, they would make these insects understand that the Imperium can conquer the stars not by words. Blaskowitz inclined his head, the weight in his voice deepening though it lacked the primal fury of Russ. If words falter, war will speak. Discipline must be made manifest, one broken foe to warn 1,000. His gaze hardened. The Imperium is never miserly with its wrath. Our fist is iron, and it falls without hesitation upon the disobedient. The meaning was clear. The only legion here was the Luna Wolves. If you, Horus, don't go, who will? Horus Lupercal. Russ suddenly called out his name, looking seriously at his brother. Do you need me to summon the wolves to help you? Russ' words, though seemingly sincere, were putting Horus on the spot. Just a few human worlds would not require 2 legions to attack. Horus immediately refused. No need, I am already planning how to attack most reasonably. Horus also understood that his 2 brothers, from the very beginning, had no intention of showing off their true abilities. Really? Blaskowitz immediately interjected, stating his true intention. We are here to observe and learn, to learn from you the tactical application of the Astartes. Blaskowitz's reason was unassailable. He and Russ had just returned, and they knew little of the Empire. Their ability to resolve the Psychnuans did not showcase much military talent, but relied on their Primarch abilities and the Psychnuans' racial characteristics. I understand, Horus sighed inwardly, resolving to learn more about them later. Seeing Horus' attention on Blaskowitz, Russ slowly sat down and cast a look at Blaskowitz. How was my cooperation? The two had, with a coordinated attack, extricated themselves from the situation. They assumed Horus had nothing good in mind. Again, subtly, he pressed the button. Abaddon, nearing the banquet hall, stopped. He looked down at the data slate, his brows furrowed. His gene father had instructed him to enter upon receiving the signal, but he didn't understand the 2 signals. After a moment of hesitation, he chose to leave. In 5 hours, my legion will launch an attack. You are welcome to come to the bridge to observe. Horus put aside his regrets, adjusting his mindset and preparing for the operation. He felt a strong sense of, elder brother, responsibility. We are eager to learn, Blaskowitz replied with a gentle smile. Tell your whelps to bring paper and pens. I need to take good notes, Russ' loud voice rumbled. With a Primarch's photographic memory, there was no need for paper and pen. He did this to show respect. Horus felt greatly encouraged. I'll go prepare first, you can look around freely. He left his seat, ready to fight a beautiful battle that his brothers would remember. Blaskowitz rose to politely see him off, while Russ, with his legs crossed, casually waved his hand. Let's go, let's look around the vengeful spirit, Blaskowitz called to Russ, preparing to tour the battleship. Hey, you. Russ stood up, pointing at a Luna Wolves warrior. Show us around your glorious battleship and tell us about its magnificent past. The 2 followed behind the Space Marine, traversing the vengeful spirit, listening to the warrior's detailed explanations. The warrior was intelligent, choosing a route with changing scenery that led the 2 Primarchs to the bridge at the last moment. The bridge was a large, black hall adorned with golden lines. Blaskowitz's Doom Slayers and Russ Guard stood solemnly. Horus was already waiting, seated on his throne, with a high-backed chair on each side for his brothers. Are they still not surrendering? Blaskowitz sat down, quickly grasping the situation. A massive fleet slowly approached. The human alliance's core world had raised a shield, covering the entire planet, looking as if they would resist to the death. They want to rely on the planetary defense system to force our fleet to retreat, Horus patiently explained, controlling the holographic images. The existence of void shields renders many tactics ineffective, which is why Space Marines must conduct ground operations. Horus shook his head. The fleet's firepower was useless. Blaskowitz nodded in agreement. The existence of void shields indeed rendered many traditional tactics ineffective. The planets were like hedgehogs, untouchable, unapproachable. The only purpose of a battleship is to hunt enemy battleships, gain absolute air superiority, and then safely land on the target planet. Quite amusing, Russ picked at his eye boogers, offering his unique perspective. We're like barbarians driving spaceships, hacking at each other on the planet's surface. Horus spoke clearly, explaining the necessity of the landing operation in a very short time. If the planetary shield wasn't lowered, the fleet's firepower would be difficult to use effectively. In the ground assault, Astartes were essential, and heavy equipment like Titan tanks were indispensable. The fleet's only role was to ensure orbital security, preventing landing forces from being subjected to enemy orbital strikes. It was not a large landing battle, and Horus quickly got into the zone. His command ability was outstanding, his insight sharply discerned defensive weaknesses, and he had ample combat experience. The core worlds of the human alliance had impenetrable defenses, complete with antiship and antilanding firepower, which was their reliance for daring to resist the Imperium. Blaskowitz and Russ sat beside Horus, carefully observing how Horus would break the deadlock and open the attack route. They cherished such learning opportunities, not missing any details. I hate attacking human worlds, Horus said, his command actions not slowing, but his tone slightly regretful as he continuously communicated with his brothers. Not only do we face strange leftover technology, but we also have to find every way to eliminate our human kin. We are of the same kind, yet we fight each other. Horus' tone carried genuine regret. On the path of the Great Crusade, he had eliminated many Xenos and destroyed many human worlds. Unity and unification are a great cause, and sacrifice is inevitable, Blaskowitz spoke slowly, explaining in a formulaic manner, putting a hat of justice and ideals on death and bloodshed. He knew very well in his heart that those euphemisms for war were merely to make death sound better. The high platform of honor was built with blood, every brick and stone a skeleton of sacrifice, and profit was the gift of death. He understood that war was an embodiment of plunder. Russ remained silent, listening to his brother's conversation noncommittally. For him, the Emperor's command was everything. In his soul and body flowed loyalty like a wolf's. For battle and conquest, Russ would charge with his wolves at the Emperor's command. Sacrifice and great cause. Russ would not think too much, following orders was his instinct and mission. Horus said no more. The fleet moved away from land-based firepower orbits, deploying decoys toward the planet. His probing, with dense gunfire, tested for enemy firepower vulnerabilities. The fleet released a large number of slow-moving decoys, penetrating the void shield, forcing enemy anti-air defenses to retaliate. The first wave of probing exposed most of the firing points. Knowing it's a desperate struggle, that the solid shell will eventually be breached, they still choose to hold their ground and attempt to resist. Power and profit push them towards madness, Russ said, his deep voice conveying contempt for such foolishness. We are the Emperor's sons, born with supreme power. We don't need to strive for it. Power and profit will gravitate towards us naturally. Blaskowitz pointed out the difference between Primarchs and mortals. Mortals need power, craving every shred of profit. The initial motivation is the fundamental human desire, survival, and then to survive better. These are beyond reproach, after all, they are biological instincts. Without this divine power, we would merely be one of the countless beings, Horus nodded, agreeing with Blaskowitz's point. Russ did not refute, crossing his arms and observing the battle, no longer disturbing Horus' control of the situation. After the first wave of probing, Horus found vulnerabilities, seeing countless gaps in the anti-air fire net. The intricate defense system, meticulously calculated and built by mortals, was full of flaws in the eyes of a Primarch. With a simple assessment, the Luna Wolves' orbital drop began. Drop pods continuously fell, descending sequentially strictly according to the routes calculated by Horus. The first batch of drop pods penetrated the void shield and landed on the planet's surface, quickly establishing a landing zone outside the Hive City. Tanks, aircraft, and Titans rapidly descended, forming a massive fire support force. Coordinating with the Astartes, they quickly launched an attack, clearing bunkers and defensive facilities on the city's outskirts. Blaskowitz remained silent, a sharp glint flashing in his eyes. The Luna Wolves, under the command of their Gene Father, were disciplined and had clear objectives. Their unified coordination far surpassed the Warhounds, with exquisite mutual cooperation. The Warhounds' legion was the embodiment of savagery, breaking through enemy lines with valor, but if the enemy's will was tenacious, they would suffer heavy casualties. The Luna Wolves were different, they were a clenched iron fist, striking fiercely at the enemy's weak points, quickly crushing them. Even Russ nodded, highly approving of his brother's legion for their valiant combat. A legion with a Primarch leading them for a long time indeed had extraordinary fighting power. The Luna Wolves advanced very quickly, swiftly dismantling the outer facilities of the Hive City, rapidly reaching the city walls, preparing for a siege. They reached the city walls in less than a few hours. My lord, a communication from the Human Alliance has arrived. They are willing to renegotiate. The comms array monitoring personnel removed their headphones and respectfully reported to the Primarch. HMPH, Horus had not yet expressed his stance, but Russ snorted coldly, a strong disdain flashing in his eyes. Let alone a Primarch, even a regular commander knew that the arrow was on the string and had to be loosed. There was no room for peace talks now. The Space Marines on the ground yearned for conquest, the mortals awaited achievements, and the Adeptus Mechanicus eagerly anticipated relic technology. How could they stop? Stopping now would be a betrayal of the warriors and an irresponsible act toward the Great Crusade. Tell them, from the moment the first bullet was fired, there is no longer any possibility of negotiation. They have only unconditional surrender. Horus dismissed the request. The battle continued. The Hive City shields flickered, and the Space Marines pressed against the city gates. The rulers incited the populace to ascend the walls, to make a desperate stand. All defensive weapons fired at full power, and the defenders, replaced batch after batch, surprisingly held back the Legion's offensive. The lightning-fast assault devolved into a defensive tug-of-war, and the Luna Wolves suffered some casualties. Horus frowned. His finger hesitated slightly, then he pointed out a new tactical order, Grey Claw. The name wasn't very good to Blaskowitz. Grey represented ignorance, ill omen, and death. Claw was a sharp blade in attack. He only believed that Horus was getting serious, preparing to employ a more aggressive tactic. What happened next made Blaskowitz's face harden, and a surge of anger rose in his heart. Horus, Grey Claw tactic was issued, and new drop pods descended, from which emerged warriors different from the Luna Wolves. They exuded a somber aura, wearing unpainted power armor, revealing a faded bronze color. On their shoulder pads, the ancient Roman numerals, 19, were inscribed. Blaskowitz recognized the somber warriors of the 19th Legion. They had been under Horus' command since the beginning of the Great Crusade. Their objective was clear. Under the cover of the Luna Wolves, they launched a fierce assault toward the Hive City gates. Space Marines were powerful, but they were still flesh and blood, incomparable to true steel. The Hive City's fixed defenses showed no mercy. Turrets poured fire, plasma rays and laser beams interwoven into a deadly net of firepower, causing heavy casualties. They still pressed on, enduring the fire net to penetrate the shield and place melta-bombs. The strict defenses quickly tore through 100 warriors, leaving them fallen before the city gates. This isn't what I wanted. Blaskowitz's voice was like ancient ice, sweeping through the vengeful spirit's bridge, making everyone's hair stand on end. Doom Slayers, proceed to the landing craft and support the ground battle. He gave Horus a deep look, said nothing more, turned, and left with his sons. Horus remained expressionless, nodding in silent acknowledgement of his brother's departure, and continued to focus on the battlefield before him. He knew the source of Blaskowitz's anger, the Space Marines who had sacrificed their lives. However, Horus had reasons that would allow him to persuade his naive brother after the war ended. He believed victory required a price, and sacrifice was the foundation upon which it was built. Russ glanced at Horus, then at the departing Blaskowitz, his gaze moving back and forth. After a moment of consideration, he chose to follow Blaskowitz. Wolves, follow the Doom Slayer. He roared, striding towards the bridge exit. Are you sure you want to go down? Horus didn't look up, staring at the holographic image, his brow slightly furrowed. You're not even wearing power armor. They can't harm me, Russ said, pulling up his long robe and tying it around his waist. He grinned, unhesitatingly following Blaskowitz's footsteps, and shouted to the Space Marines at the door, send me a greatsword. If not, a metal pole will do. Watching his two brothers leave, Horus' expression subtly changed, revealing a hint of displeasure. In his mind, Russ had already taken a side, aligning himself with Blaskowitz. From the moment Horus first saw Blaskowitz, he secretly resolved to view this magnificent brother as a rival. He felt they were similar, both cherished by their father, both inspiring his expectations. Although the Emperor's indulgent attitude towards Blaskowitz made him uncomfortable and even sparked an inexplicable envy, as the first son, Horus believed he should be magnanimous and willing to share his father's love. He raised his hand to his chest. A pocket sewn into his magnificent robe held a golden ring. You are my Sagittarius. Horus clearly remembered his father's hopeful gaze, his smile full of love. He placed a golden ring in his own palm, symbolizing protection. Horus sighed deeply. Now, the two similar brothers had a slight disagreement on the front lines of the battlefield. It was time to talk. He watched his brothers leave the bridge, knowing that after the war, they would need to discuss their differences. He really is a bit much, Russ mumbled, speaking cautiously as he walked alongside his brother. He naturally knew the source of Blaskowitz's anger. You shouldn't get involved in this mess. Blaskowitz did not reply, his clear eyes looking at Russ, his rational gaze reflecting Russ' wild face. By following him out, Russ had entered the conflict. Blaskowitz decided to finish the battle first, then talk to Horus. This was a vortex of clashing ideologies between the two. Russ could have stayed out of it, but he stepped right in. Staying out of it is impossible, Russ shrugged, quietly explaining his reasoning. We have 20 brothers, our personalities are bound to be completely different. Do you think that when we all gather together then, will it be harmonious and brotherly, or will we be at odds, each disliking the other? Blaskowitz said nothing more, turning his head and striding forward. His silent attitude precisely indicated that Russ was correct. 20 brothers, tolerant of each other due to their blood ties, but certainly not harmonious. Compared to Horus, I feel like you're a normal person. Russ' eyes gleamed with wisdom. After a moment of serious thought, he nodded, stating with absolute certainty, at least more normal than Horus. Blaskowitz nodded, saying no more, and walked through the corridor to the hangar, boarding a landing craft. Russ, with his guard, closely followed his brother's footsteps, taking the greatsword and boarding shield offered by the Luna Wolves. This will have to do, he weighed it, nodding with reasonable satisfaction. The landing craft descended rapidly, carrying the two Primarchs and their guards swiftly into the battlefield. Blaskowitz's expression was calm as he led his Genisons out of the dropship, quickly assessing the battlefield situation. The battlefield was shrouded in smoke, various energy beams making it intensely hot. The Legion was still attacking fiercely, but the heavy firepower had no effect on the Hive City protected by its shields. The firepower network in front of the Hive City's gate was dense, and the bodies of the 19th Legion accumulated continuously, paving the way forward with their lives. He'll make his brothers despise him. Russ stepped out of the dropship, spitting disdainfully. Children without parents treated like this by him. Experiencing it firsthand, Russ grew even more displeased with Horus, and a hint of contempt entered his eyes as he looked at the Luna Wolves. The honor of the 16th Legion was built upon the sacrifices of its brother legions. Let's go, Blaskowitz said, summoning his shield from warp space, and called out to Russ, we'll breach the city gate and end this battle. I've been looking forward to fighting alongside you for a long time. Russ raised his boarding shield, activated the disassembler field of the greatsword in his hand, his eyes fiercely determined. The group quickly advanced towards the Hive City gate. The news of the Primarchs joining the battle was exhilarating. 19th Legion, fall back. A voice came through the comms array. The Primarch's order came quickly, devoid of passion or encouragement, his voice as cold as frost. The warriors of the 19th Legion froze. They were preparing for the next charge. Didn't the little whelps hear me? Another wild roar came from another Primarch. A sudden oppressive force emerged, and the Legion warriors looked towards it. Two giants were rapidly approaching. Blaskowitz saw the warriors' hesitation, and his expression grew even more displeased. They had even grown accustomed to the Grey Claw tactic. He now felt that Grey Claw was a bit too euphemistic. This despicable tactic of sending people to their deaths should be called a suicide squad. The 19th Legion knelt on one knee. They dared not defy the Primarch's authority, maintaining silence amidst the majestic aura. They moved as close to the city wall as possible, gathering within a huge crater, where the Adeptus Mechanicus had set up shields, serving as a temporary forward position. Get out of here! Russ roared sharply. This area is now under the command of the Warrior King and the Great Wolf. But, the Legion Master knelt, hesitating at the Primarch's order. On the battlefield, there was always only one commander. Currently, Horus was in command, and although he respected the Primarch, the Legion Master of the 19th Legion still voiced his doubt. The 19th Legion is under the command of my brother, Horus' voice came through the comms array. Horus was also curious how his brother would take over and accomplish the 19th Legion's mission. Go stand aside. Russ glared, driving the 19th Legion warriors away. He was not inherently rude, but he used a display of rudeness to make these Space Marines keep their distance. Because he also didn't know what would happen next. Blaskowitz held his shield in his left hand, a slight smile playing on his lips as he looked at Russ. Should I just charge straight in with me? Russ bared his fangs, striking his shield with his sword, responding without backing down. Do you want me to charge ahead? Doom Slayers. Wolves. The two Primarchs growled. Keep up. Blaskowitz led the charge, activating his shield's force field to block attacks, holding it in front of him as he began his assault. The Necron artifact, its shield force field expanded outwards, protecting everyone behind him. No tactics, no plan, the group charged straight towards the city gate, enduring dense enemy fire. Russ followed behind his brother, holding his shield and greatsword, charging forward, knowing Blaskowitz's capabilities. The Doom Slayers swung their weapons, continuously bombarding the enemy on the city walls, their tall bodies blocking the front, protecting the wolves behind them. For the Great Wolf. For the Warrior King. They ran with all their might, afraid of holding back. The two Primarchs' insane actions deeply shocked the Luna Wolves. Charge. Horus' command came swiftly, he had to give the order. Blaskowitz's actions were impulsive, and he was worried that if the city gate couldn't be breached, his brother might get injured. The Luna wolves pressing forward could draw some of the enemy fire, covering his brother's movements. For Horus, the Luna wolves could no longer hold back, bursting from cover and rapidly charging towards the city gate. At this moment, Horus on the vengeful spirit looked solemn, worried for Blaskowitz and Russ. No matter how different their personalities and philosophies, they were still blood relatives, the closest of brothers. Prepare for impact. Blaskowitz roared, accelerating fiercely with his shield, gathering all his strength, and charging straight towards the steel gate. Prepare for impact. Russ roared, raising his boarding shield to block in front of him, standing at the forefront of the formation. Blaskowitz's sudden acceleration was so fast that the Space Marines couldn't clearly see it. His speed didn't decrease, but rather continued to increase. Directly in front of him was a steel gate, dozens of meters high, several meters thick, and weighing tens of thousands of tons. Did the Primarch intend to smash it open? This question arose in everyone's minds. They simply couldn't believe how flesh and blood could contend with steel. Including Horus, who thought his brother was being overly confident, even overestimating himself. However, in the next second, the shocking scene relayed from the battlefield stunned the usually composed Horus. He sprang from his throne, staring wide-eyed at the holographic image. A thunderous roar shook the heavens and earth, and a visible shockwave spread out. The Space Marines clenched their teeth, enduring the shock and vibration from the sonic boom. They were stunned, even forgetting to activate their liman's ear. At the enormous gate of the Hive City, the entrance was now wide open. The steel gate had vanished. No. It had been flung away by the Primarch's immense power, crashing into the city, dragging a trail of blood and crushing those blocking the way behind the gate before finally falling to the ground. Awesome. Russ truly felt the impact from inches away. He raised his shield, swung his sword, and followed Blaskowitz into the city. Follow the Primarch's footsteps. The usually silent Doom Slayers roared, swinging their weapons, and followed their Gene Father into the city. Blaskowitz's eyes were icy cold, his left hand trembling slightly from the impact, but he still held his shield high, deploying its protective force field. This artifact, forged from the body of a god, continuously deflected physical projectiles and energy beams. No weapon in the material universe could penetrate this shield. His vision cleared, and he saw the Human Alliance soldiers' faces filled with terror, their gun-wielding hands trembling. The giant, shield in hand, emerged from the smoke, his bare upper body a mass of knotted muscles, his right hand gripping a shotgun. His face was heroic and his expression cold. Just one look at him made their knees buckle involuntarily. Mortals in simple armor bowed and knelt, raising their automatic weapons, no longer possessing any courage to face Blaskowitz. Those who surrender will be spared. None who resist will be left alive. Blaskowitz's roar was as deep as muffled thunder, further shattering the enemy's will. Russ, like a hurricane, swept into the city gate. His beast-like eyes scanned the kneeling soldiers, and his roar boomed, "The pack takes the walls. Doom Slayers, press forward." The soldiers inside the city dared not resist. They had witnessed the might of the two half-naked giants and lay on the ground, trembling. Russ' arrangement suited the battlefield situation. Taking the walls would reduce enemy firepower, allow more allies to enter and expand their advantage, and ensure that the fruits of their victory could not be easily overturned. "Let's go," Blaskowitz nodded and called out. The operation had to be carried out in one go, capitalizing on their momentum to push straight to the enemy's heart. The squad started running again. Blaskowitz's super shotgun roared continuously, its immense power systematically eliminating automated defense turrets. Russ backhanded his greatsword to a Doom Slayer, borrowing a long halberd for precision shots. Enemy bodies were disintegrated into atoms by the weapon. Atomic sparks continuously flashed on the cold steel streets of the Hive City. The Doom Slayer's disintegration weapon swept through everything like a storm. The sounds of slaughter and screams echoed. Children cried, women shrieked in terror, and men knelt, trembling. They couldn't clearly see the charging squad, but they could feel the oppressive force and killing intent. Facing such beings, only by bowing down, begging for mercy, and showing submission could they save their lives. Unstoppable, Blaskowitz opened doors he encountered and broke through walls. Nothing could stand in his way. He was like a human tank, rampaging through with overwhelming firepower. Unstoppable. Unrivaled. Osiris. Reaching the center of the Hive City, Blaskowitz let out a low growl. Hearing the deep call, Osiris looked up. His Gene Father was calling him, and he immediately responded with passion, "Present." With Russ present, Blaskowitz gave a verbal command, "Take half the men and go shut down the reactor to lower the void shield." Understood. Osiris gestured, calling out names through their psychic link, and led half of his brothers to find the plasma reactor. Time to climb. Blaskowitz looked up. The spires of the Hive City towered into the clouds. Rulers preferred high places, where the air was fresh, the view expansive, overlooking the entire city, greatly embodying authority and prestige. The elevators had long been sealed. The rulers of the upper hive were very fond of their lives, sealing the elevators and layering floor after floor of blockades. The coming battle would be an even more brutal street fight, with deadly traps everywhere. Blaskowitz and Russ exchanged glances and shook their heads. There was no better way. Just as they were about to move, Blaskowitz's expression changed, and he looked towards a winding alley. Then Russ also sensed the approach of a living presence. A young man was crawling on the ground, his body like a maggot, slowly inching forward. His coarse linen robe was filthy, his body emaciated from malnutrition, and his hair extremely dry. The young, thin man clasped his hands together, pressing them tightly against his head. He trembled like a sieve, his teeth chattering. Sirs, all sirs. Blaskowitz and Russ exchanged a smile, knowing the problem was solved. Don't waste words. I know what you want to say. Don't delay, lead the way quickly. Russ instantly moved closer and grabbed the young man by the scruff of his neck, lifting him from the ground. The young man's dim eyes suddenly lit up. He knew he had made the right gamble, boarding the ship to a new era. This way, esteemed sirs, he quickly composed himself, bowing and leading the squad into a narrow path. At the end of the small path, there's a private elevator. The bigwigs of the upper hive secretly come down here for some alternative thrills. To ensure timely access, the bigwigs' elevator system is independent. As the young man spoke, a sinister expression, mixed with the excitement of revenge, appeared on his emaciated face. Blaskowitz slightly raised his chin, and the Doomslayer immediately understood his Genofather's meaning. His figure shot out, and 5 seconds later, he returned with some mortal food in his hand. The black-armored warrior said nothing, stuffing the food into the mortal's arms. Thank you, esteemed sirs. Tears streamed down the young man's face. He ravenously devoured the food, quickening his pace even more. It's just ahead. Following his guidance, Blaskowitz indeed found a hidden elevator at the end of the winding path. 10 men will go up with Russ and me. The others will stay behind as backup, to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. The secret elevator was not big enough for everyone, so Blaskowitz decisively split his forces. Your brave and decisive actions have been noted. You will be rewarded. Blaskowitz nodded to the young man before the doors closed. The young man knelt on the ground, tears overflowing from his eyes. Thank you for your mercy. The elevator ascended rapidly. Inside, there was even a display screen, clearly showing the current floor. His tragic hatred finds its justice today. Russ narrowed his beast-like eyes, eager for a big fight. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Similar tragedies will only be more common within the Imperium. Blaskowitz's words were as cold as the icy waters of Fenris, a bucket poured over Russ' head. It's still good to play the hero once in a while. Russ didn't refute, marveling at what they could accomplish in the present moment. As the elevator began to slow, Blaskowitz raised his left hand, preparing to activate his shield's force field. The master of this place is waiting to greet us. Someone was ambushing them outside. 300 heartbeats. Russ also raised his shield, his long halberd ready, eager to drink blood at any moment. Doom Slayers were always ready for battle. They were born for combat, fighting alongside their gene father. The moment the elevator doors stopped, the ambushing soldiers nervously aimed. With a thunderous bang, Blaskowitz burst through the door, leading the charge. His super shotgun roared to life. Its explosive pellets tore through the center of the soldier formation, destroying 1/3 of them with a single shot. Russ' face was grim as he charged at the well-equipped upper hive soldiers, his long halberd swinging, reaping lives. The Doom Slayers' weapons opened fire, annihilating a large number of soldiers in an instant. The defending soldiers couldn't get a single shot off. They all fell to the ground before they could pull their triggers. They left a few alive as guides. Seth grabbed one by the collar and lifted him. The man was too terrified to scream, and a foul-smelling liquid streamed from his bladder. A spineless coward, Russ' nose wrinkled. His sense of smell was the keenest, and the sudden stench went straight to his brain. Facing a group of monstrously powerful men, the soldiers were scared out of their wits, leading the squad towards the planetary ruler's hall. Resistance along the way was scattered and sporadic. The soldiers couldn't muster the courage to strongly resist the superhuman warriors. Bang! Russ kicked the ornate door open with a powerful stomp, charging first into the extraordinarily luxurious council hall. Only a few screams were heard. The Human Alliance rulers, a group of bloated, worm-like individuals, knelt on the ground, constantly begging for forgiveness. Blazkowicz walked to the sound system, broadcasting to the entire Hive city through the microphone, "Your leaders have been captured. All soldiers, lay down your weapons and surrender to the Imperium of Man." His voice was as steady as cast iron, carrying an undeniable sense of oppression. The remaining resisting soldiers dropped their weapons, raised their hands, and emerged from cover, surrendering to the nearest units. Ah! Another scream came from the sound system. Russ pressed a dignitary onto a table, signaling him to speak. The resistance below had not yet ceased. There were still scattered pockets of resistance, with diehards inciting soldiers, refusing to believe their rulers were captured. "Surrender quickly. Put down your weapons and surrender. Do you foot soldiers want to kill us?" The bruised and swollen fat pig shrieked in terror, urging the loyalist soldiers to surrender, lest he lose his own life. Just then, the void shield flickered faintly, a sign that it was about to shut down. Osiris had completed his mission, successfully shutting down the plasma reactor and lowering the void shield protection. The dust settled. The Human Alliance never stood a chance. The intervention of two Primarchs was overwhelming, destroying the defenses point by point and completely opening up the situation. The ignorant greed of the rulers, their relentless pushing for more, ultimately brought the Imperium of Man's retribution. They neither gained the benefits they desired nor retained the power they once possessed. Blazkowicz and Russ completed their handover in the top spire council hall and immediately returned to the vengeful spirit aboard a landing craft. "Are you sure you want to come along?" Blazkowicz asked Russ solemnly, a bottle of scavenged fine wine in his hand. He had something to discuss with Horus, and a conflict might even erupt. Blazkowicz truly didn't want Russ to get involved. Two could keep a secret, but three would inevitably let it slip. It wasn't that Blazkowicz didn't trust Russ, but the discussion with Horus involved too much, concerning their future brotherhood. "I made myself quite clear just now." Russ shrugged and smiled, his casual, relaxed gaze holding the firmest support for his brother deep within. "Putting things in perspective, Horus' actions truly disappointed me." As Russ spoke, his expression gradually turned serious. He disagreed with Horus' methods. "This isn't just your personal opinion now. I also want to hear what reason Horus had to use a brother's offspring as cannon fodder. He must explain himself. The lives of those warriors who were used as cannon fodder became stepping stones for the Luna Wolves' honor. Even without you, after witnessing Horus' actions, I would still seek an explanation from him." Russ' voice was low, suppressing the anger in his throat. His bestial eyes narrowed, filled with contempt and disdain. "If his answer doesn't satisfy me, on this matter, the Space Wolves will scorn the Luna Wolves." "We'll go to him together," Blazkowicz said with utmost solemnity. Thinking of the 19th Legion's warriors, he felt very distressed, to demand an explanation for a brother's offspring. The two Primarchs stood shoulder to shoulder, like warriors heading to battle. They were fighting for justice now. Horus was waiting in his private quarters on the vengeful spirit. There was no technological equipment here, and the soundproofing was excellent. Family shame should not be aired publicly. If brothers had disagreements or arguments, they should close the door and discuss it. His radiant and amiable face had lost its usual composure. This Primarch, who had conquered galaxies without batting an eye, now showed a hint of nervousness. He sat steadily at his desk, seemingly as unmoving as a mountain, but his hands under the table were tightly clenched. Horus was deep in thought. As a commander, he believed that victory in war was the primary goal, and he had done nothing wrong. War required sacrifice, and victory demanded a price. Blazkowicz, the king, and Russ, the leader of the Wolf Pack, were both leaders and commanders. They should easily understand this simple truth. As Horus was thinking, the door to the room opened, and his two brothers stood at the entrance, staring intently at him. "Please come in." He sighed inwardly. What was coming would come, and everything was inevitable. Blazkowicz strode forward, with Russ close behind. Their expressions were even more resolute than on the battlefield. They had come to collect a debt, to demand the rightful honor and power for the 19th Legion from Horus. When the door closed, the temperature in the room seemed to plummet, instantly reaching freezing point. The three Primarchs stood in silence, gazing at each other. Their eyes met, and a confrontation had already begun on a subconscious level. "Why?" Horus frowned deeply, asking in confusion, "Don't you understand me?" He stood up from his chair and raised his arm to his brothers. You are commanders, you know that war always involves sacrifice and death. Horus looked at Blaskowitz with a conflicted expression, his bright eyes pleading for his brother's understanding. As for Russ, Horus felt he could ignore him. He stood behind Blaskowitz, having already made his stance clear, steadfastly supporting Blaskowitz. Just as he thought, Russ glanced at Horus, looked around the room for a stool, sat down, and began to drink the plundered wine. While stating his position, he did not deeply participate, choosing to observe how his two brothers' thoughts would clash. Blaskowitz's thick brows furrowed, and a hint of confusion appeared on his heroic face. His mind momentarily froze. He had never imagined that Horus, a genius of such extraordinary talent, would, at this very moment, fail to grasp the simple root of the problem. Sacrifice and death. Blaskowitz tilted his face slightly. Although he didn't want to fall into a trap, out of brotherly affection, he said to Horus. Of course we understand that war is often accompanied by sacrifice. Horus still didn't understand why Blaskowitz and Russ stood together, united against him. Blaskowitz shook his head helplessly, his gaze revealing disappointment. Brother, you are too arrogant. Horus, pupils constricted, and his breathing suddenly became rapid. Arrogance was the greatest sin, it looked down on everything and disrespected everyone. Facing his brother's grave accusation, his face gradually paled, as if he had lost all his divine power, one hand resting on the desk to support himself. I just want to ask you, Horus, my great brother. Blaskowitz spoke each word distinctly, his gaze like a sharp blade piercing Horus, meeting his brother's eyes. Why were the sacrificed not the Luna Wolves warriors, but the offspring of your absent brother? The sharp gaze made Horus instinctively flinch. As Blaskowitz's questioning echoed in his ears, he clearly paused. The War Council entrusted the 19th Legion to you, hoping you would utilize them properly, not send them to their deaths. To die in front of the Luna Wolves, paving the way with their lives, and exchanging their sacrifice for your honor. Blaskowitz's voice grew louder and louder, questioning Horus with every word, finally turning into a sigh. Please answer me, my brother. Why was the price not paid by you, but by them? Boom. His brother's question was like a sharp blade, piercing Horus' heart, exposing the issue he had subconsciously refused to face from the very beginning. He remained expressionless and silent, his extraordinary mind racing. Horus understood. His brother's anger stemmed not from the sacrifice itself, but from the objects of that sacrifice. They demanded equal treatment, comparable to the Luna Wolves and the 19th Legion, fair and reasonable sacrifice and bloodshed. Fair. Reasonable. On this matter, Horus truly had no answer. As a Primarch, he understood the origin of his actions, to avoid the sacrifice of the Luna Wolves, his own gene offspring. To prevent the sacrifice of my offspring. Horus screamed inwardly, wanting to blurt it out, but ultimately, the words that came to his lips were, victory requires a price. He kept a straight face, his neck rigid to prevent his voice from trembling, which made his tone stiff. Sacrifice is unavoidable. There was no direct response, still the same theory of sacrifice and price. Why was the price not paid by the Luna Wolves, but by the 19th Legion? Blaskowitz's jaw tightened, his gaze like a blade piercing Horus' evasive eyes. You have betrayed the Emperor's trust. If that brother returns one day, how will you face him? Enough. You have no right to judge me. Upon hearing the word Emperor, Horus roared in a low voice, as if a taboo had been violated. Russ immediately stood up from his chair, his bestial eyes fixed on Blaskowitz, constantly watching his movements. It wasn't that he had changed his stance, but Russ felt that if a physical conflict arose, and Blaskowitz unilaterally beat Horus, he had to be prepared to prevent the conflict from escalating. Blaskowitz raised a hand to Russ, signaling him not to worry. Their views diverged, but it wouldn't escalate to physical conflict. A momentary loss of emotional control was understandable. Brother, I will not personally admit the reason to you, we both understand the reasons. Horus regained his composure, taking several deep breaths, and gave his answer in a hoarse voice. If it happened again, even if you were present, I would still use Grey Claw. I cannot treat everyone equally or send my offspring to their deaths. After listening, Blaskowitz hid his disappointment deep in his eyes, shaking his head gently at Horus. As blood brothers, Horus would not admit his mistake to his brother. He was incredibly stubborn, believing that what he did was to protect his gene offspring. You have defiled the Legion's honor. At this point, Blaskowitz said no more, stating regretfully, you personally destroyed it. I will take the 19th Legion and demand that the War Council plan their route so they can participate in the Great Crusade in another way. To leverage their genetic advantages, await the return of their gene father, and no longer serve as your suicide squad. Blaskowitz finished, looking at the silent Horus. You should be grateful. Grateful for what? Horus looked up expressionlessly. Grateful that a grave mistake was not made. We will talk to you because we are not the father of the Legion. If their gene father were to return, how would he speak with you? With words or with fists? Blaskowitz shook his head in disappointment and turned to leave the room. Russ stood up, preparing to leave, and nodded to Horus. Horus, the wolves will scorn the past glory of the Luna Wolves. Then he followed Blaskowitz's footsteps, leaving for the 19th Legion's deck, to take them back to Terra on his flagship. Blaskowitz, my brother. Horus' voice was weak, softly calling out to his blood brother. I will allocate warships to join the 19th Legion's battle formation and depart with you. Is this compensation? Blaskowitz stopped, but did not turn around. It's not compensation, Horus said with certainty, denying the idea of compensation. Compensation is amends, usually given by the perpetrator to the victim after a judgment. Though Horus struggled internally, he firmly believed his actions were out of necessity and refused to admit wrongdoing. With no wrongdoing, and no judgment, the idea of compensation was naturally out of the question. It's a reward for them, a thank you for the 19th Legion's efforts, a reward I've never given before. Hey, Blaskowitz shook his head and sneered, they don't need your reward. I will take responsibility for them when I take them away. Horus, don't cling to your dignity. Wrong is wrong. How to rectify a mistake is the right path. Horus did not reply, and the room fell into a cold silence. I wish you a successful expedition. Blaskowitz offered his blessing, pushed open the door, and walked out. Outside the door, the Luna Wolves collectively knelt. No matter what happened in the room, they had to show respect. HMPH, Russ snorted, letting out a disgusted snort, and cast a cold glance at the Luna Wolves. From now on, honor will be earned with a heavier price, it will be stained with the blood of brothers. The Luna Wolves lowered their heads, pondering the deep meaning in Lehman Russ' words, somewhat at a loss. Only after the two Primarchs had departed did they slowly rise, exchanging confused glances. Blaskowitz and Russ walked quickly, their boots clanging on the vengeful spirit's steel deck, the echoing sounds reverberating through the corridor. The Doom Slayers and Space Wolves behind them had to quicken their pace to barely keep up with their two gene fathers. Too stubbornly self-righteous, he will suffer greatly because of it. Blaskowitz was furious. He thought Horus would understand and be impartial when leading troops. He couldn't imagine how much the Luna Wolves had concealed in the battle reports submitted to the War Council. Russ, teeth ground together, his eyes bloodshot, and his breathing heavy with anger. I really don't know what father was thinking, telling me to learn from Horus. Coming to meet Horus wasn't a whim of Russ, the Emperor had once suggested he learn from Horus, combat experience. If Horus treated his brothers and sons this way, what about the mortals and servants? Their plight was imaginable, just numbers for supplies, inconsequential supply needs. His roar echoed in the corridor, venting his inner rage. Learn from him to betray allies to win. Learn. Learn what? A fart. Wherever the two went, Space Marines knelt, and mortals trembled. They didn't understand why the Emperor's two sons, demigod-like beings, were so angry. Little pup. Are we there yet? Russ' angry shout made the leading Luna Wolf flinch. He had been anxious all the way. He dared not speak, fearing the Primarch's wrath would spread, and he would be slapped to death in a fit of rage. Great Primarch, there's an elevator 500 meters ahead. After a 200-second ride, we'll reach the 19th Legion's assembly deck level. He answered quickly, his tone light, while ensuring the information was conveyed, to avoid being questioned a second time. What are you afraid of? Russ persisted, his beast-like eyes narrowing with heightened interest. Afraid I'll kill you. That would be my honor, Primarch. HMPH. So you'd thank me then. Don't make it difficult for him, an insignificant character. The Legion cannot influence Horus, will. Blaskowitz's large hand pressed on Russ' shoulder. He suddenly remembered what his mother had told him, royalty needed to save face. He said solemnly to Russ, brother, a Primarch needs dignity. Making things difficult for a junior is not a good deed. Russ froze for a moment, not surprised by his brother's words, but by the memory and pain that flashed in his eyes. He let out a long breath, removing Blaskowitz's arm from his shoulder. Understood, a Primarch needs dignity. Russ was not truly a barbarian, he wore a barbaric exterior, but at his core, he was a civilized man. The Luna Wolf warrior nodded to himself. A king's words were indeed different. A primarch needs dignity. Thinking this, some of the Genofather's actions indeed seemed undignified. The assembly order was issued simultaneously. After Blaskowitz and Russ left, Horus began preparing for the 19th Legion's departure. As the team exited the elevator, the two Primarchs walked at the forefront, their tall figures immediately visible. Great Primarch. The 19th Legion is fully assembled. The 19th Legion, nearly 30,000 warriors, shouted in unison. They formed three Tenthausenman formations, standing neatly on the landing deck. Blaskowitz nodded to himself. The 19th Legion had not yet been completely corrupted by the Luna Wolves, they could still be reshaped. He looked around. The 19th Legion warriors stood in perfect formation, the shadows between the ranks merging, dark as ink. The 19th Legion warriors, compared to the Luna Wolves or Space Wolves, had more compact physiques, and their bronze power armor was slightly lighter. Board the ship. Everything can wait until we're on the Wolf King's flagship. Understood. The two Gloriana-class battleships, the Hrothgar and the Vengeful Spirit, aligned their broadsides in the void for easy personnel transfer. I actually thought a lot just now. From the Hrothgar's viewport, looking down at the shuttles coming and going, Blaskowitz folded his arms, his brow furrowed. When his anger subsided, after careful thought, he felt a three-point sense of relief regarding Horus' actions. Tell me your thoughts. Russ stood beside him, happy to be his brother's confidant. We stand on moral high ground blaming Horus because our legions have not yet participated in large-scale battles or experienced mass casualties. You understand what I mean, right? Blaskowitz's low voice introduced new thought. We are like undyed white silk, while Horus is a battle standard soaked in blood. He used every means to preserve the lives of his sons, even willing to bear infamy. Did he really not consider the consequences? We are Primarchs, he is a Primarch. Our minds are swiftly transcendent. Russ was silent. He was deeply pondering Blaskowitz's hypothesis. Did Horus not know the consequences? He must have, but he was willing to bear them, even if scorned by his brothers. He is a good father. Russ, beast-like eyes reflected the vengeful spirit, the bulkhead reflecting a cold light. He saw Horus. Humanity is contradictory. The Emperor is like this, you and I are like this, and our brothers will be like this. Blaskowitz looked back at Horus. His brother stood tall, his expression calm and open. Russ, one day, you will have to sacrifice the lives of mortals to preserve your sons. What will you choose? Preserve my sons. With almost no hesitation, Russ blurted out, but then he froze. He suddenly realized that the choice he was making now was no different from Horus. Mortals and space marines, their identities were vastly different, yet their essence was completely the same, a life of a fellow human. The difference between the two was that the bloodline of mortals was unfamiliar and could be squandered, while space marines were genetic sons, carefully protected. We are no different. Russ, shoulders slumped, a little angry after understanding, he experienced more and acted earlier. We will sooner or later follow in his footsteps. What has been will be again, what has been done will be done again, there is nothing new under the sun. Let them die with purpose. Blaskowitz sighed deeply, his inner self torn by contradiction. Use every life wisely, let them die with purpose. That's all we can do. He said slowly, raising his arm to wave at Horus, who was watching him. In the depths of our humanity, selfishness and hypocrisy still exist, an inherent flaw that humans, no matter how they evolve, cannot escape. Horus is selfish but not hypocritical. We are hypocritical and selfish. Horus noticed Blaskowitz. He nodded deeply, knowing his brother understood him. Are we wrong? Russ was unconvinced. Is it reasonable for him to betray the 19th Legion? We are not wrong. Blaskowitz shook his head and smiled, his radiant smile bright and open. He didn't hide anything, he taught us a lot with his actions. Russ nodded. Horus' actions might have been problematic, but he certainly didn't hide anything. Even with his brothers present, his tactics and strategies, and even when using costs, were done openly. Take it as a warning. Blaskowitz exhaled a turbid breath. His actions are despicable, but we must deeply understand his starting point. He is an example, setting a future standard for us. At the very least, we should do better than him, right? Yes. Take it as a warning. Russ, beast-like eyes suddenly lit up. Do better than him, and refute him with the iron fist of facts. Personnel transfer complete. We're returning to Terra. Blaskowitz turned to leave, saying to Russ, "I'm going to check on the 19th Legion." Refusing the Doomslayer's company, Blaskowitz, alone, rapidly moved through the steel corridors of the Hierarchal. During the journey back to Terra, he needed to reassure the warriors of the 19th Legion. He had to act quickly. After returning to Terra, he might not have much time to look after them. Blaskowitz's goal was to detach the Legion from Horus' command, allowing them to utilize their unique talents and maintain their independent existence, rather than serving as cheap cannon fodder for the Luna Wolves. This way, Horus would no longer expend them, and when facing his brother in the future, some sentiment could be preserved. When his brother returned, the Legion he inherited would be independent, with its own Legion culture. They would not be assimilated by the Luna Wolves, becoming a Legion known for assaults. Even if they did become an assault Legion in the future, it would be their own achievement. On the deck, the Legion warriors had already formed neat ranks, awaiting their Primarch's inspection and address. Having detached from Horus' command and about to return to Terra, the warriors of the 19th Legion felt lost. Briefly stepping away from the Great Crusade to adjust their existing tactical system, how should they conquer the enemies of humanity? Their path ahead was uncertain, they needed guidance. As a somber atmosphere permeated the Legion, the warriors saw their Primarch's tall figure approaching. Great Primarch. 30,000 Space Marines knelt on one knee, offering the highest respect to the Warrior King with a warrior's salute. Rise. Blaskowitz stood on the platform, his calm voice as warm as sunshine, dispelling the gloom that hung over the Legion. Clank, clank, clank. The sound of armor rubbing was perfectly synchronized as the Legion warriors rose, carefully gazing at their Primarch's glorious image. He was extraordinarily heroic, his strong physique clad in simple armor, draped with a cloak bearing the marks of war. Most striking were the glowing, muscular chest and the red runes carved into it on the Primarch's chest. Among the ranks of tens of thousands standing, only one remained kneeling, isolated at the very front, holding his helmet without looking up. Please punish me, Great Primarch. A sob came, as the gray-armored warrior bowed his head, choked with emotion. The warrior's cry was full of pain, he could not forgive his own mistakes. Blaskowitz softly called for the Legion Master of the 19th Legion to rise. Rise, Legion Master. You could not resist Horus Lupercal, just as you cannot resist me. With that simple sentence, the Legion Master trembled all over, his helmet falling to the ground, and he cried even louder, sprawled on the deck. The warrior, who had shed blood silently on brutal battlefields, was now crying like a child. The Legion Master knew that the Primarch had forgiven him, even understood and tolerated the helplessness of the 19th Legion. Under the command of a Primarch, the 19th Legion could not resist, obeying orders was their duty. Even if the orders were highly unreasonable, sending their Legion brothers to their deaths, they were forced to comply. Through countless charges and assaults, the Legion's original talents were obscured, gradually aligning with the Luna Wolves. Blaskowitz raised his hand, signaling, and two Legion warriors stepped forward to help the sobbing Legion Master to his feet. After returning to Terra, I will entrust the War Council to plan a new course of action for you. You will embark on your journey independently. Thank you for your mercy. The warriors knelt again, their helmets concealing their excited expressions. From now on, the 19th Legion would be independent, no longer serving as cannon fodder or footnotes to the honor of other legions. Blaskowitz waved his hand, telling the warriors to stand. Independence is the beginning of a new journey. Having separated from the Luna Wolves, you need to research new tactics and forge your own style. Do you have any ideas for this? Or will you continue with assault tactics? I have new plans. The Legion Master wiped away his tears, straightened his posture, and stood ramrod straight before the Primarch. He was a strong, fit man, with black hair tied into a ponytail, a stern face, and piercing, bright dark eyes. The Legion Master gestured towards the depths of the Legion's formation, calling out a fellow brother. Blaskowitz watched patiently, having an idea was best, good or bad, at least there was a direction. Warriors feared confusion, then falling into self-destructive paths, which was precisely what he worried about. The current situation made him nod inwardly. While most of the Legion was confused about the future, the Legion Master had never given up on independence. A warrior of medium build, wearing standard power armor, ran up. He looked ordinary. Primarch, please see, this is a hidden secret of the Legion, which I have never publicized, and even our Legion brothers know very little about it. Blaskowitz nodded, gently raising his hand to signal. Every Legion had secrets, and he was not surprised. The Destroyer Legion also had secrets. Feel free to display your talent. The Primarch saved us from dire straits, and no one is more worthy of trust than him. With the Legion Master's encouragement, the warrior nodded solemnly, then stepped forward, into a thin, long shadow of light, and then completely vanished. Whoosh! The 19th Legion warriors gasped. They had never felt or heard of such an amazing skill. Blaskowitz's eyes narrowed, he felt a faint psychic fluctuation, and then the warrior disappeared. He could still clearly perceive that the warrior still existed, standing motionless in the shadow. Merging into the shadows. Blaskowitz nodded with satisfaction, it was indeed a good talent. Yes, merging into the shadows, invisible to the naked eye. The Legion Master proudly raised his head, saying excitedly. A gift from the Gene Father, I intend to use this talent as a foundation for the Legion to develop infiltration tactics. Very good. The Primarch smiled, nodding to the Legion Master, this is indeed a unique talent, suitable for developing stealth operations, infiltrating enemy lines. If you had let Horus know earlier, perhaps you could have escaped your predicament. I made my brothers swear never to reveal it to Horus. The Legion Master said with a grim and unwavering expression. Our unique talent will never become an aid to the Luna Wolves, allowing them to exploit us even more deeply. As things stood, Blaskowitz said no more, nor did he try to persuade them. Within the 19th Legion, there had long been resentment towards Horus, but they were powerless to defy his authority. Now freed, away from Horus' oppressive power, their previously hidden defiance immediately emerged. However, from this day forward, the 19th Legion's animosity towards the Luna Wolves would be passed down forever with their Legion culture. Legion Master, Blaskowitz said softly, since you have a plan, I will no longer interfere with your future. I wish you smooth sailing in advance. With his worries gone and the matter settled, Blaskowitz gave a brief instruction, then turned and left. Primarch. The Legion Master called out to Blaskowitz, then knelt as the Primarch turned in question, the 19th Legion will forever remember your grace. After he spoke, 30,000 Space Marines knelt before the Primarch, their grateful shouts echoing, Great Warrior King, the Legion will forever remember your grace. When the Gene Father returns, I will relay to him all that you have done for his sons. The Legion Master's eyes were red, besides this, he could not express more gratitude. Blaskowitz waved his hand and smiled, gesturing for them to stand, and asked gently, does the stealth skill have a name? Yes, the Legion Master nodded eagerly, telling the Primarch the name of the stealth talent. I call it, Shadow Stealth. Use it well. Blaskowitz nodded in satisfaction, turned and entered the elevator, leaving the deck under the respectful gaze of the warriors. We must remember the Primarch's salvation of the Legion. Watching the Primarch's tall figure depart, the Legion Master turned to his Legion brothers and said solemnly. Let everything that happened today be written into the Legion's history, to be passed down forever. The Legion warriors nodded in agreement, the Primarch's grace deserved to be remembered by the Legion. From now on, the 19th Legion will no longer be cannon fodder, let Hor. The Legion Master realized his slip of the tongue, and his eyes shifted as he changed his words, the Luna Wolves, go and seize honor for themselves. Speaking ill of a Primarch behind his back, even if they disliked him, Space Marines dared not speak carelessly. Blaskowitz had not yet reached the Fenrisian-style palace when he smelled the pungent scent of mead. Russ was with his Fenrisian warriors, singing tribal songs and feasting on drink. Come, come, come. Seeing his brother's figure, Russ quickly came over with a drink. Blaskowitz took the goblet, petted Russ' wolf brother with one hand, and without a word, downed the mead. Those little brats have quite interesting talents. Russ put his arm around Blaskowitz's shoulder, and the two sat down together, arm in arm. Horus will probably regret it later. Blaskowitz was not surprised. Russ, though outwardly wild and rough, even seemed a bit simple-minded when he smiled. But he was a Primarch, one of the most powerful beings in the universe. On the Hierarchical, a Primarch's control over information was absolutely top-tier. Blaskowitz smiled, feeling a deep trust. Russ could have kept this to himself. A group of the finest skirmishers, perfect scouts, slipping through one's fingers, is indeed a regrettable thing.